the City of Rollingwood City Council will come to order Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. And we will start with roll call with Ms. Brown.
Present.
Alec Robinson.
Phil McDuffie.
Sarah Hudson.
Kevin, you're on.
Kevin Gladstein on Zoom.
All right, great. And Gavin Massingill being quorum present, we will move on past the roll call and move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to make public comments not on the agenda? Nothing? All right, great. Moving on to first agenda item, which will be presentations. This is the time council each year that we started a few years ago, kind of a new tradition that I began to come before you and give you a little bit of a state of the city report. And I wanted to continue that this year for you and for the public. 2 years ago, again, as I said, we started this sort of tradition. And I stood before you, I sat before you, and talked to you a little bit about what I kind of saw as the three goals for that upcoming year. And that was really a focus on our people and our systems and our bond discussion that we were just beginning at that time. When it came to our people, we had a really high rate of turnover among our staff. We were really had a deficit in some of our departments, and we had a continuing problem of losing people and having them go elsewhere. So that was something we needed to try to address. Also wanted to talk about systems. Felt like there were a number of things that we could do to review our overall systemic ways in which we do things at the city. And wanted to review those in that upcoming year. And then when it came to the bond discussion, wanted to begin having a substantive discussion with our community about some of our bond needs when it came to the water projects and the issues that we have here at City Hall. Last year, I came before you and gave you a similar update, but I was happy to report on those three items that we made progress on in the year before. And I gave you started with a team building update and talked about the Public Works Department and how they were all new, and we had brought Izzy on to lead that department. We talked about the onboarding of Veronica and Nikki in their respective departments of utilities and building development. At that time, if you'll recall, Council, you had recently named Ms. Munoz as our interim chief of police after she had been with us for a number of years. And that was also the year in which we had onboarded Desiree onto the team. On the operational front, when it came to those systems that we had talked about the year before, talked to you about the Gantt chart that we had tried to operationalize the various ongoing activities that happen in the city each year, and we've before there had never been an operationalized way in which we looked at all of those repeating processes to make sure that we weren't missing anything year to year. And we were happy to report at that time a year ago that we had successfully completed that Gantt chart process and had begun to really take that systems review to the next level. And then we were happy to have that discussion about this time, that bond discussion we started the year before, we were successful, and over 2/3 of our residents of the city had approved both the Proposition A and the Proposition B to look at those bonding needs that we have for those infrastructure improvements in the city. And that brings us to today. Again, a consistent theme from the last 2 years, but I want to tell you where we are with some of those. When it comes to our team and our people, I'm happy to report we have a record low attrition rate. We have the team that I just mentioned, including those more senior members who had been here for many years before. All of that team remains in place. I'm happy to report they're stronger than ever and doing as a better job than ever. Those individuals that we had onboarded about this time last year, they've really grown into their roles. They've gotten their feet under them. They've got a really good, strong grasp of each one of their departments, and they're just doing an outstanding job. I'm going to give you a few of their highlights here in just a moment. When it comes to that operationalized piece, that systems piece, we continue to improve upon our systems in all of our different departments. One that I'll give you an example of, you're familiar, Council, with your budgeting process that you go through each year, that we all have a number of working sessions that we work through and allow you to appropriate all of our tax dollars. We instituted a new system after our budgeting process this year with our staff, and we call it our Budget Execution Action Planning System. It's a way in which we take the budget that you have approved. In the past, one of the systems that I think was deficit was not having a good way in which to follow through on your budgeting. And so we took that upon ourselves with the staff and with myself, trying to lead an effort to really do a better job of planning out the execution of the budget that you approve. So we're happy to report that that's ongoing. We feel like it will allow us to get to the end of our budget year and not look back and say, oh, well, we forgot X or Y or Z that the council had asked us to make sure and budget for. So we're trying to follow through and operationalize those types of issues. And happy to report, as you well know, council, we've now broken ground on our bond Proposition A. We have AO Services that you selected as our contractor for that project, and they have broken ground and are already starting on phase 1 of our various water projects that are going. And we've got our bond Proposition B, which is the shared infrastructure here in the City Hall, along with our ESD 9 and our fire department, looking at shared space for both of us moving forward. We're happy to report, and Ashley and her team is doing a great job in working to start that planning process that will continue on throughout this year, and hopefully have a great report on a number of actions that you'll take on that proposition by the time we get to this time next year. Want to give you a few highlights when it comes to that team that I mentioned, the stellar group that we have here on our staff and led by Ms. Wayman, who's doing an outstanding job, and Ashley has done an outstanding job this past year when it comes to helping us approve our AA bond rating. She oversaw our successful bond sale of $3.9 million, and also is spearheading our move to electronic water meters. She's done a great job on all of those, but I think most importantly, when it comes to Ashley, her level of leadership and her ability to create a team. I think I came in at one time, and she does team building exercises. I came in one day, and they were it was after hours, but they were decorating jack-o'-lanterns here during the Halloween season as a way for her to foster a good, strong, unified team. And I think it's that kind of creative. She has more energy, obviously, than any of us do. But I think it's that kind of creative thing that keeps her team operating and has led us to have that low attrition rate that we have today. Michaela, as assistant to the city administrator, has continued to do an outstanding job in implementing our RAVE system fully and understanding all of the bells and whistles on that system to make sure that our residents are notified in a timely manner when it comes to emergencies and various issues that we need to notify them of throughout the year. She's improved our long-term record retention process drastically. She's done a great job in understanding that process and making changes to it. And we're happy to say that she was also accepted into the 2024 class of the Texas Women's Leadership Institute. So she continues to show great promise for the entire team, and I said Ashley has more energy, but Michaela really has more energy than all of us put together. Our city secretary, Desiree, has done a great job. We've added a title to her title of city secretary, and she now also has the title of assistant city administrator, and that's testament to the great job that she's done in taking on a number of other roles here in the city. We've talked about it before, but the work that she's doing in implementing a quasi-HR department here for the city, something that we had never had before. She's doing an outstanding job in that onboarding and offboarding process. She's implemented a language testing policy for our bilingual stipend that our employees get. She did a great job in implementing that. She handles all of our public information requests, which is there are far more than any of you probably know about, unless you're the one doing the requesting. And she just does an outstanding job in that respect as well as managing all of her functions in her city secretary role of managing our minutes and our packets and our agendas and making sure all of that's squared away and then followed up on afterwards. She's just done an outstanding job and continues to do so. Kim in our court is doing an outstanding job. We obviously the legislature met in 2023, and so there were a number of new compliance and new laws, new issues that she had to address in our court system. She handled that flawlessly and has all of the court updated and in compliance with the new laws. She did a great job also onboarding our new prosecutor that we work with here at the city, and has done a great job with that. Nikki in the Development Services department. Obviously, we've had struggles in that department in the past, but I think Nikki has really found her footing and is doing a really nice job in that department. Really focusing in 2023 and to present with code compliance awareness has increased and has added biweekly inspections to that process, communicating much more effectively and efficiently and consistently with our contractors in the area, trying to make sure that we stay ahead of the issues and they are aware of the issues that are coming up. She's begun classes to become a certified arborist in 2024, so something that I think that's going to help us out in the city to be able to handle some of our tree-related issues, so that she can speak very eloquently and educated on the arborist front. She'll also be in 2024. We're excited. You may remember that you budgeted in our last budget in her department to have some technical collaboration with a consultant. So we're looking forward to her engaging in that with a consultant that's going to come in and continue to try to take that development services department to the next level. We've done a whole lot in that department in the last 2 years. It is on the mend and in a better spot than it has been in the past, and getting things done electronically and stored electronically so that we can access those in the future. But we understand and know that there's still room for improvement, and we're going to be all working together, and she's going to be spearheading that for us in 2024. Abel has been with us for a long time, and I hope he never retires, because when he does, we're gonna have some shoes to fill. But he continues to do a great job and has done a great job this past year. He helped us achieve our city bond rating. He prepared both Ashley and myself for our S&P interview that we did, and helped us walk us through a lot of the information that we needed for that. Has done a great job, is always taking charge of our audit process. We're going to talk about that later tonight, but we're always in good hands with Abel, and he continues to do a great job. Our Chief Munoz, who I mentioned earlier in the police department, I'm really excited about a lot of the things that the Chief has going on. She's hired 2 new officers this past year. She promoted a corporal. She oversaw and spearheaded their successful TCO audit recently, and so was very pleased to see her come through that in such good shape for the department. And probably most importantly, she's overseeing, now that she's settled in and is no longer the interim, but is the actual police chief, she's overseeing our department reorganization, where she's kind of making some adjustments to our mid-tier management, making sure that we've got the boots on the ground that we need. And through your budgeting and her leadership, we're going to be able to put some more boots on the ground, 24/7 here in the community. And so I'm proud of the work that she's doing on that front. When it comes to Public Works, I think we all see Izzy and his crew out again. About this time last year, we were just kind of finishing off our last hiring in that department. Izzy has continued to lead all of his crew exceptionally well, and that crew was responsible for over 500 cubic yards of brush and debris cleanup after the winter storm Mara about a year ago. We had hundreds and hundreds of truckloads of debris that team took care of flawlessly, and I can testify that our debris was cleaned up much quicker than all of the surrounding communities, and it was in large part because of Izzy's leadership and his team. He also oversaw the installation of our generators at all of our remaining 6 lift stations, and that's a short bullet point, but there was a lot to that. It involved making sure that we coordinated with the gas company and with all aspects of those generators, and he's done a great job in that, and continues to also show a lot of proactive work with his team when it comes to cleaning and maintaining our stormwater drains and our culverts and creeks, and trying to not just do that after the storms that we occasionally have, but also making sure that those facilities are clean and clear before the storm comes. And that makes a huge difference in how we are able to manage our water management, our stormwater management during those events. And you'll often see them, and I've done it. In fact, I think 2 of our council members, we were all getting wet one day when they were hard at work during the rainstorm. So before, during, and after, that crew always does a great job. Last year, I also highlighted our utility billing department, and Veronica, who was new at that time, she had already made her mark and finding a number of places where we could find efficiencies, and also helping us chase down a number of folks who didn't seem all that fired up about paying their bills. And she has done a great job in all of that, and also in reconciliation and cleanup of removing various errors to ensure accuracy within our database and our utility system. She's assisted the Utility Commission with updating our leak adjustment policy, and just continues to do a great job. We're also excited because she's doing such a great job in the utility billing department. We're also, we like to cross-train. Again, that's one of those systems and one of those vulnerabilities that we have seen in the past, where we don't always have people trained for other people's jobs. We don't have a big staff here, and so it's important that where we can and when we can, we try to train different individuals for different departments as well. And because she's doing such a great job in utility billing, we've also got her cross-training with Abel as well, so that she's able to help Abel and help with some of his reconciliations and some of his bank and finance issues. So she's just continuing to do a great job. Anyway, I know that was a little bit long, but I wanted to take this opportunity because I think it's important that we do recognize our department heads and all of the folks who they oversee and who work in their various departments, because they really are the heart of the city, and they are what keeps everything moving around here when all of us are doing other things not related to this volunteer activity. So please thank them when you see them, and those who are in the community. If you have a chance, please always show your appreciation to our awesome staff. Gives you a little bit of a state of where the city is today, and look forward to another great year. I think the council is doing a great job. You're in a nice groove in your policy making role, and I look forward to working with you all as we move forward in 2024. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I like being the only one on the agenda because I can move on whenever I need to. There is no further comment on agenda item 2. And with that, we will move on to agenda item number 3, the consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
You have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
Aye.
There being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. That will move on to agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding a request from Western Hills Girls Softball regarding improvements to Hatley Field 2 in accordance with the lease agreement. I believe Ms. Wayman can help us through this agenda item.
The Western Hills Girls Softball has approached us regarding a request under the lease to construct a capital improvement, 2 separate projects actually on Field 2. In your packet, there is a description both of the lease requirement that they bring this to council for approval, as well as the request that they are making for, I believe it's the pitching. It's a pitching rubber system on Field 2, as well as a drainage system in front of the field number 2 third base dugout. Steve Frank is here with the Western Hills Girls Softball if you have questions, and there are proposals in the packet for the 2 requests that they are making tonight. And so staff would request that the council consider and possibly take action on those requests for softball.
Thank you, Ms. Wayman. Council, happy to proceed however you'd like to. If we want to hear from Steve, we can do that. If you want to make a motion, we can do that. At your disposal, however you would like to proceed.
I have a couple of items that I think bear discussion, just looking at KMI's proposal Specifically, the bullet items where they say any removal or replacement of fencing materials for access will be provided by the owner being the city. I don't know if we want to take that on, and then the unmarked water utility, or any other lines, utility lines are the responsibility of the owner as well. I have concerns about that. And then somewhere in the packet, they said something about complete unencumbered access, and I would like that outlined on what that looks like, and,
Okay, that's a good preview. If it's okay with you, I'll have Steve come up. I don't know the
Absolutely,
answer to
yeah,
any of
sure.
those questions, so Steve, come on up, identify yourself, welcome.
I've got this stuff printed out. Is it easier to look on printouts or? Sorry.
I've got a copy, thank you.
Anyone else want it printed?
please,
Here, a bunch
thanks.
of copies.
Okay. Bunch of copies. Anybody? Got lots. Sure.
All right, thank you very much. My name's Steve Frank. I'm the Western Hills Girls Softball Board President. We've been discussing this with the Park Commission. If you guys don't know, I do attend every Park Commission meeting and give a report there. Unfortunately, I was not as expedient in getting this all ready for the Park Commission meeting, so it wasn't brought to. It was my fault for not having an understanding on the lease agreement to also have it ready to come up. But so sorry for the delay in getting this stuff in there. I think the invoice that was already in the package probably is not as clear as what the scope of the work. That's page is on top of the package I just gave you. Has a much better description of the project. I'd like to, if possible, break it up into two parts. One is what I consider more the field repairs, which is bullet points 2 and 3 at the bottom. It is there's a second base issue. We have to just realign it. And then the big one is, as Ashley mentioned, is the pitching mound. The pitching mound has not been worked on since I took over about 7 or 8 years ago. It has, because we play at different age groups, it has 3 different distances. There's posts in the ground that hold the mound in place. Those mounds the posts have become rusted, so the rubber cannot be removed very easily. And so what happened was one of the coaches was trying to move it and in essence ripped the whole system out. So we needed to repair one distance, and instead I just said, hey, let's repair everything, get new posts that are not rusted anymore. So that's really that. I figure that's just more of a repair. I know it's over the 1,000, but that's part of the thing. The bigger thing is the drainage. A little history, I guess, of the fields. I will say overall our fields drain excellent. We are one of the leagues that can run after a good amount of rain. We've kept the fields in good shape. We have special dirt on our infield to help it dissipate the water. However, if you guys have been in the field area, that third base dugout is pretty much the lowest point in the park in my mind. And so all the water that comes off our field goes there. And if you're familiar, coming off the field house towards the field, there's three trees right there. About that tree line, it starts sloping towards the field also. And so water off the field house and in that area all goes down into that dugout. So in essence, anytime we have a hard rain, that dugout gets flooded. It's probably got an inch or 2 in there. Unless it's cleaned, it probably becomes inoperable for a couple days. And so we've always been talked about doing something. Little League did something on field 1. They added a French drain in front of theirs. It I think empties out right by the parking lot. Theirs a little easier than their fix was a little easier than ours. There really isn't a spot to take the water close by for a French drain. Also, the French drain, as what KMI told me, because we have a dirt infield, the French drain won't work because the dirt will get in the French drain and clog it up. So what they're proposing is to do an actual drain system. It will have grates on our field, basically in front of our dugout, that'll collect the water. There'll be a pipe that runs underneath it, as it says, about 90 feet down inside where they're gonna dig in our field, down to about that first batting cage. There is a drain system already in place right by the start of the batting cage. On that picture on the second page, it kind of points out where the things are. And so all we're trying to do is connect into that drain. It'll all be done underground. And then from there, the drain there takes it underneath the batting cage and it empties out in between the first cage and the second cage. Looking at where it empties, once again, that's part of a low point. There's a swale still that feeds down towards that. It's if you guys know, there's that extra door in between the batting cages that goes into fields 3, 4, and 5, the off-leash area. So basically the water will just kind of dissipate right to there. I don't believe, at least the way the swales and all that are, it doesn't run off into that hill onto the field house where we have the major issues. I don't see it creating a drainage issue there. But I understand the issues with the drainage in the park and the concerns and such like that. So I'm here to kind of answer questions. Oh, and then on the scope of the work, I know you mentioned on the invoice it mentions that, but in the scope of the work, it does mention that KMI will fix any sprinklers or pipes or anything that they hit during the digging. That was something that was not correct on the invoice. Okay. When we spoke, it's in that second paragraph. The trench will be approximately 90 feet. So if sprinklers or pipes are affected by the trenching, KMI will fix. I don't think it does have to go under the fence, but I don't think they're going to have to rip it down or anything. They're just going to trench right underneath it. So I don't think there's going to be any fencing issues, but I understand the question.
I guess I'm just looking for clarity. If there are, I mean, I hope they're not.
No, I mean, they
fixed
do
all
have
the
to go
fencing,
under the,
so-
they do have to go under the fence,
No,
but I
that's
don't
not
think
a
they're gonna
problem.
take a panel or anything
Yeah,
down.
that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to protect the city from unforeseen issues.
But yeah, that on the invoice, the whole thing with the piping and all that was responsibility of owner. That was not how it was explained, and that's not how he wrote up the scope of the work also.
Okay. And as far as who's paying for all this,
We are paying for the whole amount.
yeah. That's great. I know that dugout is a problem, because it's below grade. So,
Yeah, it's literally the worst thing I have to deal with up there. I mean, the park's in great shape, but that drainage, yeah.
Regularly.
And so it does, like, the kids can't use that dugout after hard rains. So it's something we've got to bite the bullet on and spend the money to do something for them. But I do understand it is a drainage thing and it is a concern.
Let me, Mr. Glasheen are you good?
I would
Yeah.
love. Mr.
I
Glasheen.
think I've got Mr. Glasheen's hand raised, and then I've got Ms. Brown. Mr. Glasheen.
Hello, thanks guys. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Apologize for appearing by Zoom. We had a family emergency that I had to travel out of town for, so appearing by Zoom. And appreciate your presentation. I'd like to say at the beginning that I'm completely support the improvements you guys want to make to the field with your pitching mound and such as that. I think the drainage issue is a little more complicated, and I think it probably requires a little more study before we approve a solution. I have studied that issue. I've looked at it with Izzy 6 months ago. we're aware of the dugouts having, standing water in them and dirt washes into them, which I understand is a problem. It's an obvious problem, and it does need to be fixed. I will say that I think the French drain that was put in at the Little League field was very poorly done, doesn't work, and just scatters gravel in front of the dugout. And looking at the situation, my impression is that the real problem is that the elevation of the soil surrounding the dugouts were probably either poured too low when they were set, the elevations of the floor the dugouts were set, or the surrounding soil has risen through blown in dirt or vegetation that converts to soil. And anyway, it's the result is that your dugout floors are below grade, and that is a problem. My impression of the solution is that it's probably a better solution is to pour. And Nancy and I discussed this, and this what we thought looking at it was that, and is that if you poured 3 inches of concrete in there on those dugout floors, both that one and the Little League floor, that would go a long way towards solving the problem. I actually think the surface drainage that exists, and I don't know if I can share a picture with you guys that I took this week. I'll try. We'll see. It says only the host can share in this meeting, so I guess I won't share a picture, but I'll describe it for you. I think the surface drainage from the field and the dugout, there's a drainage swale that runs on the west side of the field outside the fence, and it's where you're talking about running your pipe. But there is a swale there that was originally designed and purposely built for drainage, and then there was a batting cage built right in the middle of that drainage swale, which to me was a very poor choice and a bad design and a bad idea and a poor location for that batting cage. One of the problems with that batting cage is it sits right in the middle of the drainage swale, and the solution was to stick a 4-inch pipe under it that's supposed to come out both ends. One end of that pipe is already underground and it's not visible for daylight. You'd have to dig for it. And I don't know that any piping is necessary. You talked about the water running through that swale and dissipating around the gate into the fields 3, 4, and 5. I actually think, looking at the grades, I agree with you that the water doesn't go west over, near the field house and down the hill to the west. It does not do that. It goes north along that swale, and it continues all the way down where it crosses the trail at the end of the swale, which is, to me, is fine. I think that it's a good surface drainage system, with the exception of that one batting cage that's stuck in the middle of it. And I really think that if you raise the elevation of that dugout, it's going to be a much better solution. I think it's going to be harder to maintain underground drainage. It's going to get clogged up or fail. And, you're still going to have water and dirt flowing into your dugout, which is still going to be a problem if we don't raise the floor. The only additional modification I think you need, if you're going to pour 3 or 4 inches of concrete in there, would be potentially to cut the 1-inch square tubing that holds up the roof of that dugout and maybe raise the ceiling of that thing a foot or whatever you need. 6 inches, it's a little low as it is, and I'm afraid if you pour 3 or 4 inches of concrete on top of the existing dugout floor, you might have to cut that and add a little bit of height with the square tubing, which to me doesn't look like a very extensive effort. But I think if we're going to do a drainage solution or come up with a solution to this, that we've already got our engineers engaged in looking at the park drainage system, and I would suggest that we get our engineers to look at it and recommend a solution and consider the solution that I just outlined before we just authorize construction of something else. That's everything I'd have to say on it.
Thank you, Mr. Sheen. Ms. Brown?
I would share the concerns that Mr. Glasheen has raised on the drainage, and think we need to have our engineers look at it, or drainage expert. We've got several things going on concurrently right now, it seems. But I was wondering, what's your timing? Would you be looking at doing the drainage part of it after the baseball season is over?
felt like they said they could get it done pretty quickly. At least what's been proposed, and I told Ashley, I know it's all on one invoice, but the repairs in 2 and 3, those are my high priority. I really need to get those done before the season starts, which is a couple weeks from now.
The repairs on
Yeah, the second base and the pitching
base.
mound.
Yes, yes.
The dugout is a wish, right? It's something we need to correct at some point. I can live another season with, as Phil says, squeegeeing it and brushing water out. But, you
I
know, it's
guess I
something
just
we really
assumed
need to
you
fix.
wouldn't.
It gets old having to go up there every time it rains to
Yeah.
clean it out or whatever.
I just assumed that with the digging involved, that it wouldn't be done until baseball was over, because baseball's starting pretty quickly.
A couple weeks.
Yeah, okay.
And your items 2 and 3 are before council because of the cost, right? You have to.
I believe even if they are broken out separately, just the costs involved,
I just
yeah,
wanted the
I think
council
it's
to know.
over 1,000, so.
I just wanted council to understand why they have a say in the alignment of second base. So,
Yeah, the way the lease
because I think
reads,
generally we're okay with you doing whatever you need to do with
We're
second
responsible
base.
for the
so.
repairs, but I think it does say anything over 1,000, we still have to bring it to you guys.
No, I appreciate you doing that. I just
Well-
want everybody to be.
And then the other concern is, I really do hope we can get into the habit of taking these to Park Commission first and getting them reviewed there, because that's where the real eyes are for this kind of work.
Like,
We need to give them-
we discussed it in Park Commission, they just had not seen the plan.
Okay,
Okay. I want to come back to, okay, if 2 and 3 is your like must have, I'd like to kind of break this up for council if we could, and give him what I would hope would be some green light action on second base and pitching mound, and then let's come back to the first question. With that in mind, I'm happy to take a motion on what is listed here in the KMI proposal as items 2 and 3.
Move approval of items 2 and 3.
You have a motion to allow for approval of items 2 and 3 on the KMI sports construction proposal. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a second. You have a motion by Ms. Hudson, a second by Mr. McDuffie.
could I have the motion restated?
Yes, ma'am. This is just simply a motion to allow them to move forward on item number 2 and item number 3 regarding second base and the pitching mound under the KMI proposal. Any further discussion on those 2 particular items? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Aye.
Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay, you got yourself a green light on items 2 and 3, Steve. So
Okay.
I got you.
Thank you.
Got your priority items. Now let's
Yes.
go back to the first one. So my question for you, now that you've heard Mr. Glasheen's comments, do you, and I have not looked at it in as much detail as he has, but do you have thoughts on the concept of raising that floor?
I think that could be a viable option. I'm not sure. I guess the question is how much water comes off the field and how much comes off the hill. I think I don't want the field to pool up there, but I guess we would have to see. But we get double the water because of the hill off the field house. So I think that would definitely help if we raised the dugout, keep the water out that comes off the hill. It's just, if we raised it off the field, how much that pooling would just happen in the dirt, I guess, right in front of the dugout, which can be taken care of a little bit easier than cleaning out the dugout, in my mind. So it is definitely something I wouldn't mind working with Kevin and or engineering or whatever, just to see if that's a feasible option and come back.
Mr. Glasheen, well, and whoever wants to, but since Kevin's looking at it the most, Mr. Glasheen, would you be willing to meet with Steve and kind of talk through a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and I think it'd be helpful to have our engineers come out there and meet with us at some point and look at it, because all of that should surface drain through the swell from the dugouts, but I think that everyone's going to be happier if the engineers look at it and say, yes, that's a good plan. It may mean that we need to recut that swale a little bit. And, you know, I personally think that in the long term, we not need to consider relocating that batting cage that's closest to the field that blocks the drainage channel. It was just, to me, it was poorly placed. But I think the engineers could look at us and help us reach a consensus, and I'd be very happy to work with you on that. But I think we can make it better, and I think we should fix the Little League's dugout at the same time.
Okay. Ms. Brown?
I would ask that you involve the Park Commission also in that, all of those discussions, and work with Melissa Morrow, who chairs, to facilitate those meetings.
It's a great idea.
And I would like to see the recommendation come back to us from the Park Commission when we get to the point where there's a recommendation to be brought.
Okay. I'll try to keep us moving here. I'm not seeing a path forward for you right now on this one, but if you're willing
Yeah, I
to work with
understand. No,
Mr. Glasheen.
I think it was the 2 and 3. It just happened to be on the same invoice.
No,
So I
that's good.
appreciate that.
Yeah. If you would get with Mr. Glasheen, get with Park Commission, get with Ms. Morrow, and y'all try to circle up and then have it come back. Yes, ma'am?
Ms. Morrow's here.
Oh,
I was
I
just going to recognize her if she'd like to say something on this,
No, I think that's a great.
or ask
Yeah.
you to recognize her.
Got it. Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, one more?
Well, one quick question, comment. I'm just thinking, if you raise the dugout up, just want to make sure we don't create a tripping hazard for the girls going in and out of
Correct.
the dugout
Yeah.
by having a step that they're not used
Yeah,
to.
no, we would have to smooth out the walk down and the field also. Yep.
Put a ramp or something in
Something,
there so they're not
yeah.
tripping. So.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing more from you. And with that, we will move off of agenda item number 7, move on to agenda item number 8. Discussion and possible action on a request from I-9 Sports for use of fields 3, 4, and 5 for summer camps from 9 a.m. to noon on May 28 through 31, June 10 through 14, June 17 through 21, and June 24 through 28, 2024. This is, we've talked about this in the past, council, when items come, so staff is going to give you a report. They've worked with I-9 to narrow the request here a bit. I'll let Ashley tell you about that. As we've talked about in the past, when there is something above and beyond what we're allowed by council action, we'll bring it back to you for discussion. That's what this agenda item is. With that, I'll recognize Ms. Wayman.
I-9 Sports approached us with the dates of their proposed, mine got quieter. Mine used to be very loud. I feel like now mine is super quiet. So they approached us with the proposed use of the fields for their dates for their summer camp, as well as some of their other clinics. All of their other clinics that are not presented here today, they have agreed that 1 and 2 is sufficient, and that they have small enough groups that they can use fields 1 and 2 only. They have cleared those dates with softball, and we've confirmed softball and baseball that those are available. These are the days that they are requesting use of the fields from 9 to noon, and that would include fields 3, 4, and 5. They believe their camps are larger and would be best suited on 3, 4, and 5 for these specific camps. We did let them know that this would need to be approved by City Council, and so that's why they have submitted it here. Once that is completed, we'll send them through our normal process of making sure they have all of their paperwork and CPR certification and things like that. But it does require first to be approved by City Council, and so we are requesting discussion and action on that today.
Cool. Thank you, Ashley. Council.
So are they wanting to use all the fields at that time?
I don't know if they talked about using 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 5. I think it's just 3, 4, and 5, or at least they didn't clarify in their request.
Because 1 and 2 together is bigger than 3, 4, and 5.
Understand.
So that doesn't make
Sure.
much sense.
Understand.
I don't know. I haven't talked about. I suspect it so they can keep everybody kind of in one spot, but I haven't talked to them about it.
Just given what I've observed
of the camps, they seem to have kind of a flag football group and, you know, different groups doing different activities. And so I too don't really see the need to not use 1 and 2, given the fact that 3, 4, and 5 are the only areas that typically get general use throughout the day. It just seems an unnecessary accommodation, so.
And looking back at an email request, this didn't come in the specific request here, but he said they would try to use fields 1 and 2 depending on participants, which they won't know until closer. And so it sounds like it would be the option to use 3, 4, and 5 if they had a larger group.
And we're back to the fact that the areas are larger, and also, especially during the summer months, what I've witnessed is you get a lot of people that sign up. It's a hot day. Kids don't show up. There's a lot of that goes on with the camps. I mean, I certainly want I-9 to participate here for the citizens of Rollingwood, since it's the most convenient location, be a lot less travel. But I don't see why they can't make 1 and 2 work. And I also would like to have a discussion with them again about doing things like not driving stakes into the ground and doing other things that basically cause damage or potential damage to our facilities. So that being said, I don't see the rationale for using 3, 4, and 5 rather than 1 and 2.
Okay. Mr. Glasheen, I'm sorry. I
No,
think
you're fine. I agree with Mr. McDuffie, but I would certainly be open to hearing them explain, and if they were come to maybe the next council meeting, we could, they could explain it to us better, and we could have a discussion and might be able to accommodate them. I do think we should accommodate them as much as we can when necessary, but if it's not necessary, then I agree. We'd like to leave the general use for the public for 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alec?
I guess I would say that generally I would be willing to grant the request. I could see how running the camp, I mean, depending on the sports, I think that, not having the infields and so forth to deal with could make it more appealing. The one thing I would say is that the 9 a.m. to noon, I think they tend to always show up and a little bit early. At least that's what I've seen in the past. So I don't know if we're getting compensated for that when they do, but that's another thing I'd like us to look at.
Okay. I know we've talked to him about sticking to the stated hours, so hopefully that'll be a better situation this year. Okay. I'm happy to take a motion. I'm also, if there's anyone here from I-9 wishing to speak up, happy to recognize you. I don't see anyone. Don't see anyone on the screen. Okay. Happy to take a motion. I'm not seeing it happening, but the floor is open for a motion. Going once, going twice. All right, with that, we will let I-9 know that we're open to a continued dialogue on it if they want to come and have more of a discussion about the need for those particular fields. Moving off agenda item number 8, moving on to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action on a proposal from K. Freeze and Associates for a drainage study of the park. This is the much anticipated proposal that we've talked about in the past. And Ashley was able, actually it came in, I think, the day after our last meeting, so apologies for that. But it is here now for your review. I'll just say too, well, I guess we have an update on the, you know what? Mr. Glasheen, I'm going to pull up agenda item, where is it?
13.
Agenda item number 13 at the same time. Update regarding the retaining wall in the upper park near the field house. I'm pulling up agenda item 9 and 13. 13 is not posted for action. This is Mr. Glasheen's item 13, but since it's update, I assume it's our update to give. So with that, I will open 9 and 13 and turn it over to Ashley to walk us through these.
As far as an update for number 9, there is a proposal in your packet. The total cost of the proposal came in at $70,340. If this were to be approved, it would have an accompanying budget adjustment. As far as the retaining wall in the upper park, we have submitted the signed proposal based on the last council meeting. We had that proposal from IWS for the multiple projects. Council selected 1 and 3, which was the retaining wall, as well as some engineering on the corner of Nixon and Gentry drainage situation over there. And so we did send that submitted or signed proposal over to IWS. We have not yet received the engineering on this that was proposed. So we hope at the next council meeting, but we have not received a timeline on that at this time. I believe there was also a request for to also reach out to IWS for the full park study as well. As soon as we get some communication back on the one that has already been approved, we're planning on discussing that with him as well about a potential in the future of a full park study by IWS.
So with that, council, it's yours to dispose of how you wish on the agenda. It is a large ticket item, maybe even larger than I thought it would be. So if you're inclined to move forward with it, I would probably ask you give us a little time to figure out how to pay for it before you made that motion and passed it. But we'll do whatever you tell us to do. With that, I'll open it up to you, Ms. Brown.
My concern on I'm glad to hear where we stand with IWS, and I think we should not move on the K-Free proposal until we get that IWS proposal and have a chance to compare the two and see if we're getting what we need from IWS. I also have a concern with the K-Free's proposal in that it seems that there are some, I'm a little concerned that the proposals may be drawn a little too tight in a certain respect. It seems that in each instance except the location number 1, that the end result is simply to take the water that's pulled from the park and put it in the street or a drainage system. I'd like to see us explore some other kinds of solutions like the swell that we've just talked about that will keep the water, allow it to generate the groundwater.
Recharge.
Recharge, thank you. Recharge groundwater and look where it may make sense to do some rainwater storage and then use it to water the fields more than what we can afford to do right now. I would like to see some green solutions rather than just putting it into the street. And then I would also like to have a walkthrough with K-Freeze. If we decide to use K-Freeze on location 4, I think we need a walkthrough on that project. Today, the water comes off the Western Hills, and some of that water's coming onto Western Hills, the Western Hills pool facility from Wallace and above. So that water comes down and it drains through Western Hills, and additional water drains from the park and comes down on the east side of 6 Pleasant Cove and then into the street. And it crosses across Pleasant Cove and down behind, down the last block of Nixon. So the K-Freeze proposal looks like they want to route it down the upper side of Pleasant Cove. Today it crosses over to the south side of Pleasant Cove, that they want to run it down the north side of Pleasant Cove and I'm very familiar with that because that would run into the drainage that's in my backyard, which is a consideration for me, obviously, but it also would run across where we have the sewer pumps lift station. And so all of that is, you know, it's a concern to me to think how they are actually gonna look at that proposal. But that's if you look at the map, it looks like what they wanna do is bring it along the north side, into my backyard, run under the street there. And, you know, I think there needs to be some retention. There's a very large gully, behind, I think part of it's park property and part of it's maybe Western Hills property that might be used for some kind of retention there and help solve the problem a little better than putting a bunch of drainage in the street and just sending it down behind then behind my house and then behind Amy's house and into
Right.
the river. So those are my concerns with it, and I think we just need some more talking about these points and see what other ideas we can come up with. And I don't know on the green solutions, I know IWS probably has some expertise there. I know the Park Commission has been working with a firm called Moss Verde. That also, I looked at their website today, and they have quite a bit of expertise in systems other than just putting the water in the street that might be expertise we could use. But I'd like a little more comprehensive review than what I see in the K-Freeze report. We don't have, if you look at the L&V report, they actually looked at how the water's coming off the fields, how it's going down the slope. And I didn't see any kind of hydrology in the K-Freeze, you know, a kind of an overview of hydrology in the K-Freeze report. And I think if we're gonna do this right, let's do it.
Okay.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Mr. Glasheen, see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So I guess my problem with the proposal, I got a couple of problems with the proposal. One is it says it's got 4 areas that they want to look at that are identified by the Park Commission. I've been attending Park Commission meetings and missed one and listened to it, and I haven't really heard that happened, so I don't know where that comes from. Maybe I missed something. But really, I think if we start telling the engineers what the problems are that we want to solve, then we're missing an important step in the process. I've in my experience that arrive at better solutions if you study the problem before you start proposing solutions. And I think the engineers should look at the park overall and tell us where they think the problems are. You know, we can look at it and tell them where we think the problems are, but rather than, you know, have the Park Commission or me or Miss Brown or Izzy or anyone else tell them what the problem is, I think if we get them to go out there and say, first of all, look at the whole situation and give us an overview of where you think the problems are and what areas might ought to be priorities to develop solutions, and then ask them to start developing solutions. I think we're already moving on to offering them solutions, including, you know, green-based solutions or ideas that we're going to recharge the aquifer. Well, we don't know anything about the permeability of that park surface. It may have zero permeability, which would be my guess, or negligible permeability. But certainly we could give them our goals, which is we want to reduce erosion and we want to detain as much water as reasonably possible to prevent flooding downstream, but then let them give us a bigger picture and tell us where we can efficiently achieve some results. And that may require some walkthroughs, as Ms. Brown suggested.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Ms. Hudson?
I would like some further discussion with K-Freeze on this before we go forward. This was more than I was expecting, especially as a lump sum. And with no design and no surveying included in the proposal, it seemed more than what I was expecting. And I agree with the other comments. It's like, we don't necessarily know that we only have 4 spots that need to have any kind of drainage solution addressed, so, we need to not focus on just those 4. We need to look at the overall, the whole park area and come up with solutions on that basis.
Okay.
And when we get to that point, is there any way where we can all kind of have a group meeting, walk it together, look at what's being proposed so that I think there is nothing that substitutes for literally walking the ground, boots on the ground with the experts and then having them explain what we're doing. I know we don't want to violate open meetings acts or anything like that, but if there's a way for all of us on the council, since we're going to have to vote to spend a substantial amount of money to do this, I would really like to investigate an option to do something like that prior to voting through a large sum of money.
And we can do, we can post, it'd just be a public meeting, but we don't have to meet in here, so we could post for a field trip.
That'd be great.
A walkabout?
I forgot to, my last comment was, and we need to involve the park commission on this from the outset and throughout. This is the park, they're the commissioners charged with bringing us recommendations, and I think we need to involve them from the beginning.
Okay?
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yes, ma'am. Step right up. Identify yourself.
Yeah.
We know you, but
But
for the record.
Shanti Jaykumar, 3309 Parkles Drive. So, at the request of Councilmember Phil McDuffie, I shared some documents from number 6 Pleasant Cove, which Councilmember Brown brought up as all the water coming off from the what do you call it, the pool property.
Yeah.
Whatever is not absorbed there comes down. So I want to bring up a historical fact, as I like to do. When number 6 was being developed, it was a 1.1 acre lot that the city had the right of first refusal to not buy when we bought the 8.934 acres of land, the parkland. So that went to a developer, and the McMahons, many of us know them, bought the property. But before they could build on it, and you all know, some of you know, that in the past it was a quarry, so there was a big old hole there after all the quarrying was done, and it was a trash dump because we didn't have mass trash pickup, like spring cleanup or something. So a lot of people, and this is some people have told me this from who've lived here a long time, mattresses and toilets and whatever else they couldn't take anywhere would get dumped in that big old hole. So it became a veritable trash dump. So when the McMahons wanted to build, they had to appeal to the Texas Natural Resources Conservation Commission, TNRCC. And this is a letter from 1995. I happen to have all these documents. As you know,
We
I
know you
like to
do.
collect this. So I shared it with Mr. McDuffie. But one of the things is there are 2 official recharge zones on that property for the Edwards Aquifer. Okay? And so they were given permission to build there as long as they knew that those 2 recharge zones had to be protected from stormwater runoff and all kinds of other things like that. And I can send this on to Ashley so you all can take a look at it, because those were the conditions under which a building permit or whatever was issued back in 1995. Okay? There's more here, but I just thought before you all go and get the opinion of some engineers who may not be aware of some of these recharge zones or something, those things are to be protected at all costs forever. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Shanti.
Shanti, if you could possibly send that on to Ashley and
I
then
will
she
do
could
that.
distribute it.
I'll send it all.
That'd be great.
I'll do that. Okay.
Okay, so I'm sensing that we're not going to take action on this one. What I am going to do, though, is make sure that we tell K-Freeze that we want more focus on retainage and green solutions. Going to have a discussion about IDing the problems more clearly by the engineers. Would like to explore potentially talking to Moss Verde and IWS for possible proposals in addition to this K-Freeze proposal that we have. Involve the Park Commission, have a field trip.
And you have a hand raised over here.
And get the
And-
price down.
And always. And I will recognize Mr. Robinson. Yes, sir. No, that was it? Okay, perfect. Look at that. It's ahead of us. Okay, so with that, we will give those instructions. We'll, oh, I'm sorry, Kevin, one more.
Yeah, I would just say one thing I would add to that is we might have a phased proposal where the first phase is more to give us an overview of where they think the problems are in the park and where we might most efficiently achieve some benefit through engineered solutions. And I'll just tell you, I'm sorry for being long-winded, which I know I tend to be, but I'm a developer and I've built a lot of stuff. And when I was young and started building stuff, I would hire an architect and I'd tell them exactly what I'd want it. And then they would build it or design it and we'd build it and it was ugly. I didn't like it. And it was because they did exactly what I asked them to do. And I've learned since then with professionals that a lot of times instead of telling them exactly what you want them to do, it's better to let them look at the problem and tell you what needs to be done or what you should do. So
I'm going to say more focus on retaining and green solutions and aesthetics. How's that? Okay. All right. I've got our to-dos. I hear no other action to be taken on this one. And with that, we will move on. We will move off of agenda item number 9 and move on to agenda item number 10. Discussion and possible action regarding financial services provided to the city by First Citizens Bank. I'm bringing this one to you along with Ashley and Abel. Wanted to, well, I'll turn it over to Ashley and just let her explain it, but we've had a little bit of an issue with First Citizens that we want to bring to your attention and let you know how it may affect our audit, and then we've got some solutions that we're working on. Ashley?
So First Citizens Bank, they are our depository for our city funds. I believe we are in our year 3 of 5 with a contract with them at this time. We had this issue, a small scale of this issue happen last year. There's a requirement per our contract with First Citizens that they keep us adequately collateralized at all times. So as money comes into our account, sometimes we have bigger influxes of money at one time, depending on where we are in tax season, things like that. So we may have larger funds come in at one time. This year, in the month of August, we received our money for the bonds. So we received our $3.9 million that we had gone out. It was put into our account at that time. We reached out to First Citizens to let them know to expect this large sum, so that way they could make sure we were adequately collateralized. We received confirmation that that had been taken care of. They had reached out to their treasury branch, made sure that was all set up and everything was good, and we got the okay from them. But we did find out later in the year, about October, when we were working with our auditors for the first phase of our audit, collecting the information, that was not appropriately taken care of. So luckily, nothing came of it. We are now adequately collateralized. We have talked to them about it. They agree that there was some issues on their end with the notification, but it could possibly lead to some kind of note or something on our audit this year. And so we wanted to bring it to you all ahead of the audit that should be coming to us next month, April at the latest, but we believe it will come in March, to kind of let you know about this issue. We have not taken any action yet to formally, go out and look for new banks. At some point, if we need to do that, we would come to council for to issue an RFP for depository contracts. But at this time, we have not done that. We have just been assured by First Citizens that it will not be an issue again. But we did want to bring it to your attention because it may show up for the audit, and it was, significantly a large sum of money at that time that could have had, if something were to happen, if the bank were to go under, which ideally there'd be a lot of notice. You would know there would be issues that you would know about ahead of time, but it's not always the case, and so that's the point of collateralization. And so We just wanted to bring that to your attention now. I don't believe there's any action at this time, but we are investigating, what our options are, and we'd like to bring that back next month, possibly in conjunction with the audit.
And, the bottom line is First Citizens gives us a really good deal. We've got a great deal with them in terms of being our depository. Unfortunately, we've gotten what we paid for on this one. So, nothing happened with it. It's settled now, but it does it causes us some concern, and we may come back to you with another solution. But if we come back to you with another solution, it's going to cost more than what we're paying now. So it's sort of we've got to determine whether it's worth it or not.
Can you explain what
I have
that
a
means?
question.
Yes, I can. Let me take
Okay.
his question first. Kevin?
So we deposit our funds with them, and what is this reference to collateralization?
So they have to up their dollar amount. Abel, you want to come up? Because I'll mess this up. I know it well enough to sort of understand it, but I'd rather not have Abel correct me after the fact. So.
Per the contract, what the bank has to do is they purchase securities, give it to a third party. In this case, it's Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo keeps all the securities in the name of the city of Rollingwood. So if First Citizen was to belly up, the funds of the city of Rollingwood would be secured by the pledges that First Citizen bought and had Wells Fargo keep for them.
It's basically like posting bond, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's basically like
yeah.
posting bond, and so when we make a deposit, and they're always adjusting, that for us, and that was the little issue we had before. This is kind of a second strike, is why we're bringing it to you. We had a similar issue to this about a year ago.
Correct.
But it was a much lower dollar amount. It wasn't a big deal. This was a much larger dollar amount because we were literally depositing our bond funds into the fund. So the collateralization needed to be much higher. Yes, sir.
How did we discover this? How did we discover?
Through our audit process.
Okay.
That's one of the things that they
Correct.
check for.
First Citizens is supposed to, on a daily basis, their treasury department is supposed to look at our cash balances. And so the next morning, they're supposed to purchase any securities they need to make sure the balances are properly secured.
And so they just hadn't been doing that.
I'm sorry?
They hadn't done that for like 2 months or something. We discovered it in
What
October.
happened was when the bank was informed about the bond proceeds, Treasury failed to pick up the new bank account where the proceeds were being deposited. So they were looking at the old bank accounts, and so as far as they were concerned, everything was hunky-dory, everything was properly secured, but they were not looking at the new bank account that had the bond proceeds, and that's caused the problem.
And Abel and Ashley they did their part to notify, hey, we're opening this new account, make sure you collateralize it, make sure and we got reply back, yep, we're all good to go, we've got it. There was a breakdown in communication between their Treasury Department and their.
We informed them about 2 weeks prior when we knew the proceeds were coming in. We informed the bank, hey, expect X number of dollars coming in this week. So they had time to go and purchase any securities they needed to make sure the balances were properly collateralized.
So how,
Yes, ma'am.
did our auditor tell them that they hadn't done it?
No,
Or-
we
Our
did.
auditor told us, and we quickly made a phone call.
Yeah.
So they hadn't, how long was it that it was uncollateralized?
About a couple of months.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow. That's unacceptable.
that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a question about that too. So I know municipalities are different. We've got regulations on how we invest our money. Personally, when I have funds that exceed the FDIC insurance limit of $250,000, I'll put them in different banks. And then if it's too much, what I do is I buy short-term United States Treasuries. 30-day, 90-day, 1 year, whatever's left on it that I need for my timing, like through a Fidelity account, are we allowed to invest in treasuries? Or also one of my banks offers a program where if your amount exceeds the 250 limit in a money market, they have an agreement with about 100 different banks that spreads the money out amongst all the other banks, with the idea that none of your single bank limit would exceed the 250. That's a pretty common program in banks now in their bank money market departments. So I guess I'm a little confused. It seems like collateralizing deposits with securities is a very complicated way to secure the integrity of the account balance. And I'm wondering why we're doing that instead of the more common commercial ways that it's done that I outlined.
Let me take a stab and you tell me if I'm even in the ballpark, Abel. But I
Okay.
think this is a highly regulated space for municipalities because we have to avoid arbitrage. And so I think that
Correct.
look at me go. So we're somewhat limited on our options.
Right. The interest that we make off our deposits down there is minimal, but you don't go into the arbitrage area.
Right.
Because it's not that much.
So we're basically prohibited from getting investment income off the bond proceeds until we spend them.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I learned that the hard way too. That was one of my early ideas.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Seems prudent.
It seems like a
But-
good idea. But, okay, so anyway, again, council, there's issues situated. There wasn't a problem. There isn't a problem today, but we are bringing it to your attention because you may see it on the audit report, and we may bring the issue back to you as we get our arms around other potential options for other institutions. So that's your update. With that, we will move off of agenda item number 10 and move on to agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding site distances at intersections including Rollingwood Drive and Gentry. I believe this is Mr. Glasheen's item. I recognize Mr. Glasheen.
Thanks. And I've had some residents reach out to me and ask me to raise these issues, particularly Rollingwood and Gentry. As you come out from Gentry onto Rollingwood, as you look to the left, there's you're looking across the corner of the park, and there is some vegetation that obstructs the sight distance. The resident had asked that we consider putting a stop sign on Rollingwood Drive at Gentry, which I don't personally support that notion, but I did promise to bring it up and mention it for consideration. I do think that we should look at it's a deciduous vegetation. It's not as much a problem in the winter, but I do think we should consider looking at the sight distances on our intersection corners. Another corner intersection that's of concern that I brought up over a year ago is Ashworth and Hatley, where when you're coming south on Ashworth and you come to Hatley and you look to the east, you can't see around that corner because of vegetation. And we do have an ordinance on this already on vision clearance, and it's in section 107.32, and it requires that any vegetation with a height greater than 36 inches above the top of the curb may not be maintained within 15 feet of the intersection of the street surfaces of the two streets bordering the lot. And I don't think we've enforced that. And I think we need to look around the city at a couple of locations and enforce that. It is, in my opinion, a legitimate safety concern.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glasheen. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wayman. I think she may have I think we've done a few anyway.
We did alert our police department to this item and have them take a drive through and see, if there were any areas of concern, specifically this one. But now that we're aware that it's generally a vegetation and issues like that on the corners, generally in the spring we do our vegetation clearing of any rights of ways and corners. And so I think this is a good time to, if there are specific areas of concern, if you just want to let us know, we can get that on Izzy's radar and make sure that that is taken care of. And of course, at any time throughout the year, if we have an issue, we're happy to go take care of it. But we generally do take care of that in rights of ways, and especially on city property. So if this is a issue created in the park, we're more than happy to take care of that.
And there's also a state statute on the matter that requires notice to the homeowners and giving them an opportunity to cure the problem and even offering them compensation for certain destruction of vegetation. So you might want to look at the state statute as well.
We'll do that. I'll actually say for the record too, if we would, let's look at that statute. Will you pull that for us? We'll take a look at that. We also, I think 3 months ago, maybe longer, we did include in everyone's water bill
That's right.
our one pager on this issue, in case you saw it. But we do try to send that out a time or two each year, so we do have that available to any residents. And I think what I was going to say for the record, we should probably add. Let's take a look at that statute, and then if we need to add anything to our one pager, we can do that as well.
Absolutely. We do try to send that out ahead of oak wilt season, so that way people are given some time before that to do any trimming of oaks. So obviously ours would not include that unless it was a true, if there was a hazard, we would take care of that appropriately.
And I think it even has the diagram on it that you're referencing, Mr. Glasheen, as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
And one other point of concern that a resident contacted me about this week on site distances was the corner of Vale and Rollingwood. As you come out on Vale and attempt to turn left on Rollingwood and you look to the right, it's very hard to see because there's a dip in the road on Rollingwood and there's a retaining wall there. That there's a statute on the retaining walls, or an ordinance, I'm sorry, on the retaining walls also, that's in section 107.33 that requires that the retaining walls not be more than 36 inches above the street curb. I don't know that retaining wall is really the problem. I think the dip in the road is the problem. But a solution that the resident proposed was that we move the pavement striping up closer to the stop sign so that it'd be clear where you should stop in order to safely observe whether you can proceed to turn left onto Rollingwood from Vale.
Okay, will you
just
send us
passing that on?
Yeah, if you'll. What do you have a note on that? We can have PD look at that as well.
Yeah, if you want to send it over by email, we'll take it, but I think we can take
Okay.
care of it.
I think you guys have it. I'm just passing on concerns from residents here.
Okay. All right. Anything else on agenda item number 11? Hearing none, moving on to agenda item number 12, discussion regarding proposed amendments to section 32 through 38 of the city's code of ordinances regarding no parking signs. Ms. Wayman, will you talk to us about this one? I know you've done some work on it.
Yes, we were approached by the owner of, I believe it's 1015 Bee Cave Woods. It is Arise Medical Center, regarding the no parking curbs along both sides of Bee Cave Woods. I think likely why this came to light is we, about a year ago, repainted all of our yellow curbs. So this has been something that has always been no parking on both sides. But I guess it was, newly brought to his attention at that time that this entire street was no parking. He has requested a possible, for the council to consider removing the no parking restriction on that street, specifically in front of his property. So I believe that's the east side of Bee Cave Woods, but if the council would be open to it, possibly the entire street. Basically, with the kinds of tenants and the density that they're now needing due to the property values in this area, they're having issues getting adequate parking, and so that would just be something that he believes would help, particularly in that area. We did talk to the police department, and they went over and drove it, and I've drove it too. It's a very wide street. Doesn't seem to be, currently there. I've never really seen issues with people parking there, even though there is a no parking zone. Doesn't appear that it would be problematic. The only reason, we could really think of that it might have been made no parking in the past was that there is a master meter there. At the end of Bee Cave Woods from the city of Austin. That's one of our meters from the city. So that's the only thing we could think of that maybe they were trying to keep curbs clear in that area. But so it is currently no parking both sides of the street the entire way from Bee Cave Drive, or Bee Cave Road, all the way to where it terminates into the city of Austin at the end of Bee Cave Woods. And so request from a homeowner here. This is really just a discussion item. If it's something you're interested in, we can bring back an ordinance at a future meeting with potential red lines.
You said it's a request
From
the building, not the red.
The property
Yeah,
owner,
from the
not
property,
not
right.
the homeowner. Right.
Not-
right.
Is it really the Arise Medical? Because they have a huge lot in the garage. Or is it the
Can you turn on your mic?
Sorry, I asked, is it Rise Medical Center, because they have a big lot with a garage, and
It's a
it the
smaller building
next
just
to it?
beyond Arise.
Yeah. It's
That
it's
has-
that smaller building, yeah.
Mainly, it seems like counseling services
Yeah.
and probably, clients coming in and out a lot.
Right.
They have
And
a
it has-
surface parking.
Yeah, and it's a very small lot too.
Yes.
Yeah, we've looked at it. I don't see any issue with it. So if you're interested in us bringing something back to, and like I said, we tried to research it. We're not sure why it was ever put as no parking, to be
Well, I
honest.
drove over there too, and I would say that from the entrance driveway for his parking lot going up the hill over into Austin, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think going all the way down to Bee Caves Road, there could be site issues or things of that nature. So if he's just looking for relief from his driveway up, sure.
Okay. Is that-
Just on that side of the road, though, I wouldn't necessarily. There is also a lot of street parking as you get into Austin, and I understand that's in the neighborhood and it's further away from his facility, so I can appreciate why he might want it, his clients to be able to go closer. But
Okay.
yeah.
Al?
Is it commercial on both sides of the street there?
Yes.
I didn't see a problem. I just wonder, when Arise was first opened, it was a hospital, and I don't know if for emergency vehicle reasons you would have had parking limitations, but I don't think they do any emergency services there now.
Okay, well, I think I'm getting general consensus that you'd be okay with seeing something back on your plate. So with that, we will bring you something. Yes, ma'am.
This agenda item triggered a call from a resident because the attachment listed all of the parking areas. And
Yeah.
this was Rachel Ties, who lives at the end of Bettis next to Arnold Anulfo Road, the road up to the City Park Clubhouse. And she was concerned the no parking sign in that block, the hours are dawn to dusk, and the ordinance is 6 to 9 or 6 p.m. to 9 a.m.
Yes.
And she wondered if that was being changed just to make it enforceable. So I told her I would ask that question.
Yes, we had a miscommunication. There was an issue there on enforcement, and we are changing those. Bottom line, we are changing those signs for enforcement reasons because the dusk till dawn is unclear, and so we're just going to put what's in the ordinance.
Okay,
So,
that
yeah,
will be done.
that will be done.
Okay, great.
That shall be done. Okay, with that, and we will bring this back, if you'll make a note, Desiree, we'll bring that back. Okay, with that, we will move off of agenda item number 12. We've already handled agenda item number 13. Moving on to agenda item number 14. Update, discussion, and possible action regarding ordinance 2024-01-17-12 relating to outdoor pickleball play. As I've told you, this is my agenda item and Ashley's. As I've told you in the past, council, I typically don't put things on your agenda unless there's something that you need to be updated on and we need to have discussion about, or if there's something in the ordinance that, in our code of ordinances, that leads to a lack of ability for us to enforce on it. So I think I can keep this short for us because there's really two basic questions here that we need some direction on from you all. At your last council meeting, you did adopt the new pickleball ordinance, and you adopted a 40 decibel, a 47 decibel, 47 decibel cap on for pickleball play. We, after that, went and broke out our new handy dandy meter and calibrated it and started figuring out how to work it. And very quickly realized, or after we started enforcement on this issue, that we took meter readings at the location at 9:38 in the morning with no pickleball playing occurring, and we had a 54 decibel reading at that time. We took additional readings. We, being the police department, took additional readings and got readings of 57, 56, 52, 51, 50, etc. over several different time periods. So we then, I think, went to, we wanted to make sure that our meter was calibrated correctly, so we dispatched PD to Manor because they have an ordinance there and they have a meter. So we went and calibrated along with them, and I think took a meter reading at the Manor Police Department where it read at 55 decibels at that location, and we were able to confirm that the two meters were calibrated the same. So I only bring this back to you to say it was my understanding from council that your intent was not to pass an ordinance that would effectively ban pickleball play. I think the ordinance at 47 decibels probably does do that, and so if you want to leave it there, we will leave it there. If that was not your intent and you want to raise the decibel level, it is your decision to make. We just wanted to let you know that is the practical effect of the ordinance as it's written today. So,
Mr. Mayor, I have a
yes,
question.
ma'am.
The decibel readings you took, were those with or without pickleball being played?
Without.
Without. And so you're saying that is the background noise level?
It's just ambient noise. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the problem with pickleball, so we don't have readings that would show that pickleball itself would be above the,
Yeah, we haven't even crossed that threshold.
haven't crossed that
So,
threshold.
right.
Yes. And it would be nice to have a report on what those readings are so we can evaluate them. You know, it's just, I think that's a bit surprising because that's even higher than what Mr. Breeze reported, doing his own noise study.
Yeah,
So
it was.
there's an issue there.
Yeah, and we were surprised by it too, which is why we
Well,
tried to
and
recalibrate.
we don't know the meter. I'd like to see a report done by someone trained to use the machine as to what the readings are, and then work from that.
Okay.
When you
And-
said
and-
readings, are you talking about pickleball readings?
No, I'm talking about what the mayor is saying is
Okay.
we don't have, we have the mayor's word for someone who did the readings, and we don't know, you know, is it the machine that we're using that's is it the machine and the methodology that's in the ordinance?
Yeah.
Can we get the report of what these readings were and then work from that on whether there's a need to change it? The concern that I have is that the noise from pickleball is different than typical ambient background noise. And that is why all of the engineers that have studied it have recommended that you set it at somewhere between 47 and 50 in an ordinance like this.
Mhm.
When you say it bans pickleball play, I don't think that's correct, because you haven't attempted any kind of acoustical screen around the pickleball court that would lower the noise from pickleball. Plus, we don't have a study of what the noise would be at those locations with pickleball. This is without pickleball. So that's the problem I'm having with making any change based on the verbal report we've gotten this evening.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I mean, maybe I overstated that it would ban pickleball. I'm really not. I mean, the ambient, the best that we can tell, the ambient noise in our neighborhood at roughly 9 or 10 in the morning is above 47. So that wasn't really a statement about pickleball. It was about, I mean, you could have a scotch on your front porch, and if you assigned 47 decibels, I don't think you could do
Well,
that either.
let's see if that's the case.
Okay.
Let's get a report done by an engineer using the equipment and the methodology that's in the ordinance, and then see where we are.
Okay, we
Is
will.
what my recommendation would be.
Okay, and we'll do our best to find someone like that. Yes, sir, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, I did some just searching around to figure out like what standard ambient noise is, and the numbers that I read on various sites was around 50. So that doesn't surprise me that if you went out and used a device, calibrated it, that you were getting something in that range. And what it does like it does effectively ban it, because if someone's out there playing pickleball and you go out and you measure it, you're going to measure above 47 no matter what. You can't. It's so
There's acoustical fencing that can be used that will eliminate or significantly reduce that noise.
But the device will always read 50 something because of the ambient, whether or not they're playing or not. So it'll always read more. When you go out to do your reading, play pickleball, and my reading, if it's 47 with all the screens and everything, you're still going to read 50. You're still going to read above the 47. That's the point.
Right, because ambient. So
May I weigh in on this?
You may in one moment. Ms. Hudson started to comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was
okay.
just curious if there was any observation on what other things were going on. It was like their lawn service working or construction or, or it's just road noise from bee caves and Mopac and.
We'll bring our newly deputized audiologist to the Mr. Cantu. Please identify yourself.
All right, I'm a senior corporal officer, Cantu. So on Friday, January 26th, I was the one that went out there along with Assistant City Administrator Desiree. We went out there, and so I did it from the roadway, which was, let's see, about 56. I went to 10 feet from the property line. I was given access to 3012 Hatley Drive, their backyard, and I took readings from 57 at 942, 56.7. Now, as far as noise, you could hear a little bit of hammering from, I think it's Pleasant, 301 Pleasant, but
Construction there.
the construction. But I mean, it was just there was no activity. Pickleball, I could hear the birds. Now there is a concrete wall right where in the back of 3012. It's probably about 10 or 15 feet. So then what I did was I moved approximately about 50 feet from the property line, and the readings were at 50.3 with no pickleball playing. And so it appeared maybe on Hatley was rating about 56, 57, but once I went to the backyard, and it was, I think I got as low as 50.0. And then like the mayor said, on January 31st, Chief Munoz and I drove out to Manor, and we calibrated both systems. We went to the backyard, to the back of the police department of Manor, and no activity, and we were reading at 55. And that was, both machines were reading the same. So there wasn't any, as far as here on Hatley, just like I said, you could hear a little bit of hammering from the construction, but that was about it.
And was the device the one that's required by the ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually so our device is the, let's see, I have it here.
And Brooke, your mic was off, so we couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was asking if the device was the one that's in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Our device is the, I think the brand name is, it's a triplet. Let's see if I,
And it,
We looked at it the day that we unboxed it, and I think it had the various designations that were noted in the ordinance. We can look at it again, but we believe so.
so it was
Let me just
equivalent,
get that real quick.
continuous, and maximum fast exponential time weighted sound pressure levels?
Yes, they have various acronyms for those things,
Okay.
but that we did look at that, and we believed that they matched up.
And when you said you were 50 feet from the property line, were you out in the street, or which direction were you then?
so I was about 10 feet from the property line, but like I said, there's about a 10-foot
Which property line?
from 3012 Hatley. And then so what I did was I moved about 50
Okay, so the
feet.
property, you were at the property line between Mr. Harris's house and Mr. Logue's property?
I believe it was from 3016 Hatley and 3012, I believe.
So is 3012 your address, Glenn?
And then so what I did was I moved back about 50 feet because the ground kind of goes up.
Yes.
And there's where I was picking up that, I think I picked up right around 56, 57.
And when you say 50 feet away, toward Mr. Logue's front door, or,
No, so basically, the property line from 3016, because I was inside 3012 in the backyard, so I moved away 50 feet so I could maybe get to like a higher ground. And that's where I was, so I took readings from the property line, from about 10 feet from the property line, and then I even moved up onto higher ground on 3012 Hatley, and I got readings, from there. And so that's where we're at. And I do have the, I think I wrote it down here. We have it's a triplet test equipment and tools sound level meter calibrator kit, the SOM 400 kit. That's the one we have.
I don't know if that's compliant or not. I can't tell from the face of the,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cantu.
Just a moment.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. So this reading, is there a needle or something? I mean, what does the equipment look like? And then I'm assuming it shows the high level, like it'll.
So what it is, it's an instrument. You hold it, and it's got like a digital. So it's constantly 49.0, 50.1 is just because then it's got like a microphone, like a soft top, and it's just reading it. So you're just kind of holding it, and it's just going. And so like if a car would pass by, it would go up. But
Right, and then does it mark that high level mark? I mean, it continues to.
So it's not like a meter. It's digital. So it's going 50.1,
you're getting a number.
52.3. It's just
Okay,
back
but
and
it
forth.
doesn't,
And
but
there-
it doesn't keep.
There are various settings.
High
Some
recording.
it just goes continuously, and you can set it where whatever the highest noise, like the highest decibel, it will clock it, and then if it ever gets higher than that, it'll clock that. So there's multiple settings on how you want it to read it.
Yeah, I was just trying to get when he was talking about the hammering, if it was somehow pegging it when you hear the hammer
Oh, yeah.
strike.
Well, you see, and the funny thing about the hammering, I think it was kind of too far. It wasn't really.
It wasn't moving.
You would
Yeah.
get more movement if a car would drive by on Hatley. It would come up, and then as soon as a car would, it would come back down. But it's digital.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Mr. Glasheen, your hand's raised.
Yes. So I'd like to just kind of go back to the problem that we're trying to solve, which I'll remind everybody is 16 people simultaneously playing pickleball for many, many hours a day. And we tried to address that by limiting the number of hours, which I think is a reasonable limitation. The sound limitation may or may not be reasonable. I don't think we'll know that until the homeowner does put up some kind of sound barriers, as Ms. Brown mentioned. And I think it's reasonable to expect the homeowner or the pickleball court owner to put up sound barriers, since his court goes all the way adjacent to the property line, before, we asking for some relief from the noise. And I think if we do get sound barriers put up and there is some request for relief for noise, I'd be glad to consider that. But we might also combine that with a limitation on, no more than 4 persons playing pickleball at a time, as in one match with doubles, instead of having 16 people out there at once. So, I don't want to ban pickleball. The noise level may be low, but I don't think we're going to find out until the homeowner puts up sound barriers. And then we may also need to limit just how many people can be playing at a time. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Okay.
Um,
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Harris is here. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have comments that you'd
Happy
like
to-
to make.
Happy. Okay, come on up.
Glenn Harris, 3012 Hatley. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Officer Cantu, for the numbers that you've reported. I appreciate the effort on everyone's part to give due diligence to accurate measurements. My wife was present when those measurements were being taken. There is a very large construction project very close by to us that does impact the background noise level. I'm not going to dispute the measurements as taken, but I would like to call attention tonight to some literature where the numbers in the literature are not agreeing with the numbers we're seeing here. So we have something to sort out there, but I would like to call attention to a number of items that are in the agenda packet that Councilwoman Brown has assembled that speak specifically to numbers. So I'm going to talk a lot of numbers. I would also like to point out that there's quite a large number of factors that can influence those numbers. The topology of the environment where you're standing in relation to where the noise appears, background construction, reflective surfaces. There's a lot of items at play here that impact the pickleball noise. And what has not been discussed so much in the conversation we heard just now is the fact that the pitch of the pickleball is very unique. And in addition to the volume, it is the pitch of the pickleball strike that is scientifically documented to be annoying to human ears. So I'm going to speak to those things tonight. Yes, and I think the items that I'm speaking to are highlighting some of the information that is in the packet in support of a stringent decibel limit. A large amount of the information that Ms. Brown has assembled comes from a gentleman named Bob Unitic. His resume reads, USA Pickleball Ambassador at Large, USA Pickleball Certified Referee, Registered Professional Engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, founder of Pickleball Sound Mitigation, LLC, a group that studies noise issues around pickleball and advises on how to best resolve them. So some of the noteworthy points in the document summaries include: pickleball sounds are typically about 70 decibels at 100 feet away from the strike of the ball. Residents in homes located in a quiet residential area are used to noise levels of 40 decibels. Therefore, the level of pickleball noise is 30 decibels louder. So what's important to note is that 30 decibels equates to an 8-fold increase in perceived volume, 8 times louder than the baseline noise level. And I'm recognizing here, Mr. Mayor, that baseline noise level of 40 decibels doesn't agree with the measurements that we're taking on site, but I will claim that there is a very large construction project going on near our home. and that can impact that baseline noise level. A construction project doesn't go on forever. Once that home's built, it's on to a different site. Second point I'd like to make is that human hearing sensitivity varies with pitch. What's more striking than the decibel level is the frequency. Pickleball has a high pitch with a frequency similar to the beeping noise that a reverse garbage truck beeper makes. That frequency catches your attention. That's part of the problem with pickleball. Barriers and distance are the most effective tools. This is a quote from that gentleman I spoke about earlier, Bob Unitic. Courts that are expected to get lots of use should not be located close to homes. When we increase the distance to homes, things get better. Doubling the distance drops sound levels by 6 decibels in open areas. End quote. That 6 decibel drop equates to a 66% decrease in perceived volume. Decibels are a log scale. A movement in decibel makes a huge difference in the perceived volume. And a note of caution on the barriers. Barriers can be absorbing or they can be reflecting. Sound reflecting barriers will send pickleball sound back towards the courts or perhaps towards other homes, redirecting it to a different location. Absorbing barriers may be the best choice in some cases. Lastly, these are words of advice from Bob Unitic, direct quotes. Do whatever you can to ensure that the average sound emanating from the court to the nearest homes is 50 decibels or less. Second quote, cities should not simply convert tennis courts to pickleball. If they do that without considering sound, they're likely to have unhappy people. So at the last city council meeting, I proposed 47 decibels as the limit based on international and national standards recommendations for impulsive category noises. This is important, impulsive category noises. That number is derived directly from ISO and ANSI standards. As stated in the Centennial Colorado sanctioned noise study, research has indicated that highly impulsive sound should receive a 12 to 13 decibel adjustment. That adjustment is versus continuous sound. Our current city ordinances specify 60 decibels as a continuous noise limit. 60 minus 13 is 47 decibels as an impulsive sound limit. That 47 decibel limit is consistent with scientific research and with the Centennial Colorado pickleball ordinances. That number also emphasizes a fundamentally different human perception of impulsive category noises. They are simply more impactful to human ears than other types of noise. So the body of the literature that's been compiled here by Councilwoman Brown suggests 50 decibels is an appropriate limit. In terms of perceived volume, 50 decibels is 23% louder than 47 decibels. If the council believes that 50 decibels number is more appropriate for Rolling Wood, I understand that there is literature and a Park City, Utah precedent around that number. I do think we need to draw a clear line in the sand that anything above 50 decibels is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Okay, council, I'm agnostic on what you do. I'm just telling you what the ambient level is now. So leave it the way it is. Don't leave it. Raise it. Whatever. But just telling you where we are in terms of enforcement. So.
And the only further comment I'll make is we don't have a reading of what the decibel level is with 4 players playing. And so that's really what we're trying to control, not the ambient background noise. We're trying to establish a marker at which additional noise mitigation must happen. And so we don't have that for, we don't have the, a measurement of what the decibel levels would be on a court with 4 players playing.
We don't, but we know it's going to be more than 50.
Well, and that's the problem.
Right.
And we know it's going to be impulsive.
Right.
And we know that all of the professional recommendations we've received that are in the literature, I don't think there's much challenge to that, is that pickleball at 50 decibels or greater it's a problem. And so if you the reason I was asking Officer Cantu about the decibel readings that they took at Mr. Logue's house is that there's a very significant change in topography, and if you're measuring from Hatley in front of the tennis court's actually sunk below the street level of Hatley by 5 or 6 feet or more. And there's quite a distance with a lot of vegetation. There's both the concrete wall and there's distance with vegetation if you're measuring from Hatley. So you don't get the same noise you get at the bedroom window at Mr. Harris's house, which is 20 feet from the pickleball court. There's no barrier of any sort there. So I think, I don't know whether the standard that's in the ordinance says that you should not use equivalent continuous or maximum fast exponential time weighted sound pressure levels, because you're not picking up, that doesn't pick up the impulsive nature of the pickleball noise. So if you're trying to describe the point at which you would require additional sound barriers, I think we've got it right. I think we've got it right.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Can I just say something? This is like, if you have a device and the ambient area is greater than, let's say it's 52, 53, we don't know if you had 4 players what it would be. If it's lower, you still wouldn't be able to tell that it's lower because the ambient is 52. Let me take this other example. Let's say we built a dome around this pickleball court and we had like a 2 foot of sound insulation on every walls, and you go out and you stand outside of the thing, you're still gonna measure 50 something decibels, and you're not, maybe there's no pickleball noise because you're playing inside. So the point of the whole thing is like, yeah, 47 is gonna kill it, 50 is gonna kill it because the ambient noise in the neighborhood is greater than that, and you'll never be able to tell what the pickleball noise is because the ambient noise is always gonna be bigger than that. Like, even if they did all this stuff, great sound barriers and everything, you go to measure, you're gonna measure the ambient noise. That's the point. Like, it is what it is. I mean, I don't care. I mean, we voted on this last time, and to me, it's like, whatever, it's over. Like, I don't know why we're still talking about this, but, yeah, it's.
But there is a point to Mr. Harris's, which is perhaps the ambient noise was because of the construction. So if the real problem is the baseline, I would like perhaps for the measurements to be taken on a Saturday when there isn't construction happening and find out what the ambient noise might be during that day. If Officer Cantu would be willing to do that, that may, because it may be the ambient noise from the construction from the rather large
Could be, but
house.
I've read a lot of, I mean, I just
Yeah,
pulled up a
we'll
New York
see.
Times article
Yeah.
that showed that the ambient in the areas is like 52 in suburban areas. So
Okay.
it's gonna, I think the measurements are right. Well, whatever, let's just move on. I just want to point that if you make it where you don't know, like you go pull 4 people out there and play, if it spikes above 50 something, then you know that, okay, it's greater than that. But if it's below the ambient noise, you're never going to pick it up. That's my whole point.
Yes, sir. But we're about to move off of this.
I'll be really quick.
Okay.
Just a suggestion. Dave Bench, 1 Randolph. It seems that when you take a measurement like you did, you're getting ambient noise, background noise. Most background noise, most ambient noise are low frequency sounds. Pickleball is not low frequency. What you want to be doing is measuring at a certain frequency level, a certain frequency range to see what the bother is. Now, I'll bet you any money these machines can be set so that they zero in on a certain frequency. And what I would suggest is that be investigated, and 2, that you might want to amend your ordinance to include those frequencies or put some kind of a range in there that you can measure at a distance, just like the ordinance says, and get a true reading of what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Kevin, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just think it's premature discussion until they put up noise barriers and demonstrate they can play pickleball without annoying the neighbors. If they can demonstrate that, then I would be glad to consider changing the noise level. But I think that's the issue.
Okay,
Well,
got it. Yes, ma'am.
I think part of the problem with that is that what they have presented is that the
Right.
noise mitigation
Correct.
is like
It's a moot
tens
point.
of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to ask them to put that in and then have come back and say, oh gee, sorry, still too loud, you can't play, and then they've gone to that expense. So we kind of need to figure this out before that level of investment is required.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And I think I think our ordinance does that, but because it would require a professional to do the readings according to the national standards for impulsive noise that are defined in the ordinance. And so I think if a person can, they'll have to hire someone to do this work, do the analysis. But if they do the analysis.
Pause there. I feel bad.
Oh,
Thank you guys for being here. I've meant at every pause to welcome you. So welcome and goodbye and good night. Thank y'all for being
And
here.
come
I hope
back.
you've learned a little bit about how government works. Don't let it scare you off from running someday. It's always this boring.
but
Yes, ma'am.
from what I read I've read a lot about this. From what I read, an engineer can tell you, and if you read the materials that are produced by the acoustical fencing people, they can test what their product will do at your site. And that's what's being done. That's how it's being addressed.
Okay.
And so, and the other issue is, well, I won't go there.
Yes, ma'am. And we really are about to move on. So go ahead. But go ahead.
But, Shanti J. Kumar, 3309 Park Hills Drive. I just want to say something from my heart, because this is about our neighborhood, and I'm passionate about every one of you who lives here. The issue here is, let me give you an example. When the city wanted to put a milk and cookies right there in the park, without consulting the neighbors, Mr. Alec Robinson, Flo Macklin, Jess Butler, who would have had to face traffic from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. almost 364 days a year, every day. Nobody even consulted these people that were going to be most affected by the noise, the traffic, and all kinds of things, and in a park at that. And here we are now talking about a neighbor, Glenn Harris, who has been very silently, in my mind, this is my quotation, silently suffering all the noise and all the disruption to his peace of mind and his property values and everything else that comes with it. And here we are, not allowing this issue to be laid to rest so that Mr. Harris and the other neighbors who have written to you, in fact, somebody even wrote a poem to you guys, and he may come up with a song next time, protesting. Let's help our neighborhood, restore peace in the neighborhood. Decibel levels are going to be there because there's going to be construction in Rollingwood for the foreseeable future. If it's not one house, there is another one just being behind my house, okay? So that is being picky about the noise level. Yes, do that, but please, for the sake of the neighborhood, let's get this pickleball straightened out. You guys are almost there, so let's not the decibel level stop us from restoring peace to this issue and to Mr. Glenn Harris and all the neighbors. I live not too far from there. I've had my problems with traffic there. Lots of people have written to you. And let me tell you something. When the milk and cookies was on the agenda. Not one single council member lived anywhere close by. Not one single RCDC member lived close by. Not one single P&Z. I could go on. None of them were personally affected by it, but they wanted that milk and cookies. It really riles me up to think about it. In fact, my friend Flo Macklin lived longer by 6 months so she could put that issue to rest. Her son at her
This is
memorial.
not about milk and cookies.
No,
So-
I'm saying.
For God's
I'm-
sake, don't
I know,
take us down
I
that
know.
road.
But we are going that route when we don't need to. Let's, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, all of you,
Let
you
me-
don't live there.
Yeah.
Please help Mr. Harris.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let me be crystal clear. I am not taking any one side on this.
Okay.
But the way this ordinance is written, it will be enforced the way it's written. I don't care how it's written. All I'm saying is the ambient noise is at 50, so there will be nothing allowed that goes above 50. Or there will be nothing allowed because the ambient noise is at 50. I don't care, and I'm not picking sides. I heard last month that your intent was not to ban pickleball. I simply brought it back to you to let you know that's what's going to occur. I'm fine with that if that's the council's decision. We will enforce the code as written. I just put it back in front of you in case you wanted to adjust anything. I don't hear anyone wanting to adjust anything, so we're going to move on.
I think based on Mr. Bench's comments, that would be a really good thing to investigate, because that's really the issue that we need to address is the noise level of the pickleball play. And so if there's a way that we can adjust the meter or set the meter or whatever so that we can actually measure that, that would be a good way for us. And that's what we would need to enforce on as well, is the noise from the pickleball, because we can't do anything about the noise on Mopac or Bee Caves, whatever, which is probably a big part of our ambient noise around here, so.
We will, we'll definitely look into that. We felt like we bought a really good meter, but we will research and see if there's a better one to be had.
Well,
So-
or if there's a setting on the meter that we have.
There are some settings, and we did adjust them, but we'll look at it.
See what that
Yeah.
is. So-
Yes. Yes.
I was
Alex?
gonna say, yeah, just look at the frequency range. I mean, that is a good idea. Maybe you can carve out like the high frequencies and do a measurement.
We will spend some. Yes, ma'am.
And I will
have
think
no
that we
further
are
comment.
all trying to find the right line to walk on this,
Yes.
because I don't think any of
And I
us
think-
are trying to dismiss the concerns that
No.
the neighbors have. At the same time.
And I'm not looking to belabor the issue for you or anyone else listening to it. I just
Right.
want to let you know, having a problem on enforcement. So.
Right. And so I think we're all trying to work our way through this issue. It's not that we're trying to ignore it or avoid it or prolong it or whatever. It's just a
Or
difficult
ban
issue.
pickleball.
Right. It's just a difficult issue, and we're trying to make sure that we're balancing all of the concerns and coming up with something that is the best option for everybody concerned, so.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'm hearing no action to be taken on agenda item number 14. Moving on to agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action on ordinance authorizing a special use permit for pickleball courts. This item is Ms. Brown's, and I will turn it over to Ms. Brown.
Thank you. This is the ordinance that would require a special use permit to be issued before a person could convert an existing tennis court or sport court into a pickleball court, permanent pickleball court, or if they sought a building permit to put in place a pickleball court. If a homeowner sought to put in place a new pickleball court, it would require both situations, conversion of an existing court or a new pickleball court, permanent pickleball court would require a special use permit to be issued. You'll see that there's two versions of an ordinance. Charlie prepared one, and I reviewed what Charlie prepared and thought it might have been a bit broader than what we requested, and so I prepared an alternative that would just require that the there'll be a site plan and a noise study presented with a permit application, and those would ensure that the site plan, the location of the pickleball court would be consistent with the setback requirements that apply to any sport court, and that the noise study be done to ensure that pickleball play on the pickleball court would not create noise in excess of the decibel level required by the ordinance. So that's what this would do. And it would, where we're here now with a pickleball four permanent pickleball courts in place, and having to ask or direct a homeowner not to fully utilize all four courts. This would address the issue at the outset and ensure that appropriate noise mitigation parameters are in place before a pickleball court permit would be issued. And so, if we have the votes to do it, I think Charlie and I can work out the technical differences between his version and my version by next meeting. Or we could work through that tonight if you want. But I would like to get a sense from the council whether you're interested in adopting an ordinance that would require a special use permit for installation or conversion of a permanent pickleball court.
And of course, it would have to, and I apologize, this would be a recommendation to move forward, and this would go through the regular zoning process and
Yes.
come back to you for final approval. Yeah,
That's a good point. This is, just for council's, a refresher, this is the item that we split off from the two items because they had two different paths that they needed to take
Right.
last month.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown, for laying that out. Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, no, my thought on this hasn't really changed since last meeting. I think what you're gonna find is that, like, we don't have another tennis court in the neighborhood, that we talked about this, and this one situation was an issue that I think we actually shut down without even passing the ordinance that we passed last month. This one, I think you're gonna have a lot of families that have sport courts out there that their kids are gonna wanna play, like pickleball maybe. Dad will buy a net, set it up and play. Now you're making them violate this ordinance because they had to go through this whole SUP process to even like go play on their sport court. I don't think it's
That-
necessary at all, and I'm a no on it. That's where I stand.
Well, this would apply to a permanent pickleball court, not a temporary pickleball court. And that was done in recognition of the issue you raised, where someone wants to play an occasional setup game of pickleball. But if you were putting in a permanent pickleball court, this ordinance would apply. So
Okay, this gets back to enforcement. How are we gonna know if someone did a permanent installation or a temporary installation? How are we gonna define that?
the same way we handle every other building permit.
Well, I have a sport court. I play basketball on it, let's say. I don't have one, but if I had, but I have a concrete, I play basketball or whatever, and I wanna set up some net. How are you gonna differentiate between a permanent and a temporary solution in that?
What would happen would be that if you didn't have a permit and the neighbors complained, then there would be enforcement done. And if you did not, if it was a permanent pickleball court and you hadn't put up the noise barriers, then you would be required not to play. First there'd be the nuisance complaint, and then you'd be required, if you wanted to continue to play on your permanent pickleball court, you'd be required to get the permit and do any noise mitigation that your particular location would require.
What does that mean, like I would
And
like,
Alec,
drill in?
Alec, make sure your mic's on. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, does that mean that I would like, if I drill, I'd have like drill holes in for the net or something to hold that in, and then paint it with stripes, and that's a permanent installation? Or what if I just have a mat that has like the stripes on it, and then the net that can kind of remove? Because that's the way they did it over at the WAC. I saw, like, I played out there before, but they just had like a temporary mat down so that could be taken apart and moved, turned back into a basketball court. I mean, it's gonna be the same amount of noise either way, like, I just don't,
That
I
can be
don't-
defined.
I don't know. I think that enforcement is gonna be an issue, just like we're finding out enforcement on the noise, is an issue, so I just don't think that, I'm not ready to like vote for a special use permit.
Anyone else have thoughts?
Can we get an explanation of the differences between a special use permit versus just needing to get a building permit for installation of a pickleball court? Or conversion to a pickleball court?
Sure. A building permit, they may or may not need to get a building permit to begin with. I don't know what our requirements are for laying a permanent foundation within someone's backyard. Usually, I don't know if you have to get a building permit for that or not. So they may have to get a building permit. So they have to get both. They have to get a building permit if it's going to be a concrete foundation or something, they'll have to get a building permit for that. But that's separate from the zoning requirement for a use. And that's what the special use permit regulates, is the actual use of the pickleball, for pickleball. That's the real difference. The building permit is to construct it, the special use permit is to authorize the particular use.
And that special use permit would have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission as if it were a true zoning change. It would
Because
go
it
through the
is.
zoning process.
It's considered an actual zoning change.
Can you, Charlie, this is a question, can you do it through a building permit if you just required, when the building permits for a pickleball court required the building permit application to include a noise study? I mean, that's what we want is the noise study, or I think what we want, is that a noise study be done, and any noise mitigation be put in place at the time the facility is constructed. So I'm not sure, can that be part of the building permit process, or does it have to be a special use permit?
I don't know the answer to the question of whether or not we can require a noise study for the issuance of a building permit, because the building permits are issued under an international building code, which we can make local amendments to, but they are typically for construction, right? Safe construction. So I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure about a general law city's authority to require that type of information prior to the issuance of a building permit. I just don't know. I've never been asked that question. The health and safety use, almost all use regulations are, well, I guess technically, in order to regulate use, you have to utilize the zoning code. And I don't know if, a noise criteria in the building code context would be considered a regulation of use or not. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, that's why you've recommended the special use permit.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, council. Mr. Glasheen, sorry, I keep forgetting to look up there.
That's okay. I agree with Mr. Robinson's comments and would just say I think we've already addressed this with noise, and I just think it just seems a bit redundant and cumbersome to me. I'm not sure we need it. We've got a noise limitation already, and it isn't even really, gotten to play out. It may even need to be refined. I think let's see how what we've done works, and if we need to do something else, we could consider it later.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Okay, with that, the floor stands open for any motions or not. I will give you a second to think about it. Going once, going twice. Okay, with that,
Well,
yes, ma'am.
I thought,
Sorry?
I didn't know if
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sarah Field, if Councilmember McDuffie or Hudson had any further comment, but I will make a motion if not.
Okay.
I'm inclined to agree that I think right now, everything with pickleball is such in flux that we don't know how we're gonna enforce, what we're enforcing, anything like that. So this may have a lot of merit. I would like to hold off until we clarify the current issue and see where we're at before we try to put in yet another level. So that's where I'm at.
That's where you are.
I would agree with that. I would like to get the noise issue figured out before we put, I mean, because until we get the noise issue identified, we don't know what to ask for in a noise study.
Right.
So I think we should get that figured out to
Right.
see if we can isolate the frequency and measure that and get that straight before we put another level of evaluation in here.
Then I will withdraw. I have no motion to make on item 15.
Okay, thank you, council. Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. With that, we will move off of agenda item number 15, move on to agenda item number 16. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance related to short-term rental of outdoor amenities in the residential zoning district. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. I think Ms. Wayman has some additional, well, she can tell you what's in the packet, but I'll open it up with Ms. Brown.
This item would limit short-term rental of amenities. And amenities is defined as an indoor area used for recreational purposes or an outdoor area anywhere on a lot, including but not limited to pools, sport carts, patio areas, outdoor kitchens, grills, landscaped areas, areas of decking, decorative paving, or other similar surface. This would define those kinds of amenities as something that could not be rented on a short-term basis, just like we don't allow short-term home rentals. That's what this ordinance amendment would do. There are now companies that are scheduling rental of amenities, just like you might rent a home for a short-term rental. And I think the concern is that our current ordinance wouldn't capture that kind of short-term rental, but could cause some or all of the same problems that short-term rentals of homes would cause. And so this would prohibit the short-term rental of recreational and outdoor amenities.
And I have I don't know, devil's advocate, whatever issue on this, is that I don't know why we want to restrict it to short-term rentals of those things. Because there's a difference if you say, you know, we're going skiing for a week, we'll rent our house out while we're gone, versus we're still living in our house, we're just going to let somebody come and use our pool. And so you can get around that. If you're not having to leave, you say, well, I won't rent it for the day, I'll rent it for the month. But you only have to come for a day and use it for a day, but we've rented it for the whole month, so it's not a short-term rental. Or, you know, we're gonna rent it and provide swim lessons in our pool. You know, somebody's gonna rent it out and provide swim lessons in our pool for, you know, every day for, you know, once a week or whatever for the next year.
I think this question is directed to Charlie on drafting.
I was asked to do a short-term rental. That's what I brought forward.
Well, I just want to make sure that we are restricting what we want to restrict. And so if there's a way to get around saying that we don't want anybody to be able to,
Yes, we can do
because
that.
you're just renting a piece of the property. You're not talking about renting out the whole thing. And so you can use that for, you know,
That's a good point.
somebody wanted to
I
rent your
guess-
tennis courts to give tennis lessons, you know, or
Your idea,
Whatever.
the swim comment made, that made me think of something like we used to like, when our kids were little, we would go over to another family's house and they would have instructors that they would hire and bring in to you know, for swim lessons and stuff like that. You're not talking about like trying to limit something like that, or use like that. Just like basically.
Their kids are learning with their kids.
Right, but if they're renting out their pool so somebody else can run a business in their backyard,
Well, I mean, technically, well, I don't know, I'll draft it however you want, if we wanna if maybe we need to take a belt and suspend, if y'all believe we need to take a belt and suspenders approach, but technically, no commercial uses are already prohibited in a residential district, and so if you rented out your swimming pool for an entire year for somebody to do so, that would be a commercial use, and it would be prohibited already.
well,
I'd like to
where's
weigh
the
in
distinction?
at some point.
I don't know.
I've
Okay.
got you, Kevin. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Well, I was just wondering where the distinction is between a commercial use. It's like, how many times do you have to rent it out before it becomes commercial?
So, this is just off the top of my head. But the whole short-term rental, how we deal with short-term rentals came up because of a focus on short-term rental of homes as a result of VBRO and Airbnb. And it became an issue and quite honestly a surprise to most people, other than apparently the Texas Supreme Court, that the term residential use doesn't mean what we all think it means. And as a result of a case that was not directly, that did not directly affect municipal regulations, but directly affected homeowners and their ability to regulate uses within the homeowners association, where the word homes are limited to a residential use, I'm paraphrasing here, and the court said, well, allowing a family to come in or someone else to come in and rent your home for less than 30 days is a residential use. They just happen to be using it residentially for a shorter period of time. And so they said that is not sufficient for purposes of restricting short-term rentals. And so that's when everybody said, okay, well, we need to better define what short-term rental means, which is why, and I can't remember, did we do this did we do this when I came in, or was this already in place? Okay, so that's why we have these short-term rental provisions with respect to properties. I don't know that and I don't want to say we don't, because as we've learned, I have no idea what a court's going to do nowadays. But having said that, you know, I don't know that we have the same problem if we prohibit a commercial activity. I think a court is going to look at that differently when you're renting out just a piece of something, your pool, or if you've got a really nice outdoor living structure that you can lease out for parties. I think a court will look at that differently. But having said that, I understand where you're coming from, and I can of course come back, or if that's the direction from this body, it might be better if we just get that direction and then start it through the zoning process rather than bringing it back again, because that'll just delay it another month. But I can certainly attempt to draft something that solves the problem that you are referencing, and then we'll let the zoning commission also sort of sort through it as well before it gets back to you.
And I just wanted to make sure that we figured out what issue it is we're trying to address, and make sure that what we put in place actually addresses that issue, and there's not a way to get around it.
And the reason I say what I say, what I did, is the reason I said what I said is because it was what does residential use mean, right? And they said, well, someone living in your home for less than 30 days is still a residential use. That's not a commercial use. That's a residential use. But someone renting your your pool or your attached structure for, that is clearly not a residential use. I think it is a commercial use. Who knows? The court could say I'm wrong too, but those are my thoughts on it.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Glasheen, now to you.
Thank you. My concern about this whole discussion is that we're trying to solve a problem that I'm not sure is a problem. Until this becomes a problem, I'd rather us not try to solve it. And let's wait until it's a problem. And it's not going to be a problem to solve it later because it's not the sort of thing that can be grandfathered. So, let's deal with it later. I'll also tell you my wife wrote a long piece for the Texas Observer on short-term rentals in September, just less than 6 months ago, and went to several cities and studied all their short-term use ordinances, and many of the ordinances were being struck down by the courts while she was writing the article. I think Dallas passed one that got stayed by a court. Fort Worth, I think, got struck down at the same time, and this is all within the last 6 months. And so I think it's better for us to let the whole legal environment settle down and sort itself out, because all the other cities are going through this generally within the framework of short-term rentals as opposed to amenities. And I think we already have a short-term rental ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, and that's fine. But I just don't think we need to go on to amenities until it becomes a problem.
What would be a problem in your mind?
Where there's some activity taking place that was causing some annoyance to people that live in Rollingwood, and who brought it to our attention and said, we have a problem that we want y'all to fix.
Yeah.
Something like what Mr. Harris has done for us here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glasheen.
Yeah, just to
Mr. Robinson.
kind of on that point, I forgot. I did wonder if we'd had any complaints on this, or if we'd done any searches on these platforms to see if there's any homes in Rollingwood actually using these platforms.
Apparently, the answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm.
On the platform issue, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I
that
think
we-
we'd have to have
yeah.
staff if
Yeah.
there's.
I don't
any
think we have. I don't know if council has done their own research.
But no complaints or no?
We haven't had any complaints. I think this first was raised in some testimony that was earlier, a couple months ago, but I think it was related to the bring to our attention that these platforms do exist is how it came to be. But we have not done any research on the platforms themselves. Yes, ma'am.
I did research on the Swimply platform, and there is one Rollingwood residence that rents a pool on that platform.
There you have it. Step right up. Please identify yourself.
Amy Patillo, 3 Rockaway Cove. So I think it might have been my comment that triggered this issue.
Honestly, couldn't remember. But,
So I'll just say that part of the reason that I brought it up was as I was reviewing the ordinance after hearing about what Mr. Harris was addressing, I noticed as I was really getting into the details of what was included in the different restrictions related to commercial uses of properties, I looked at the short-term rental ordinance and realized that it really is focused on just the residential property, the domicile, and not all of the other things that a lot of the homes in Rollingwood now have that wouldn't be considered your primary residence. And so I knew of the app because I have friends who use the app. And the reason I thought of it and mentioned it at that point in time was that if there were things that needed to go ahead and go to P&Z and y'all addressing pickleball courts, it seemed like an appropriate time to also use the efficiency of that time to maybe look at other potential problems that could crop up. So I agree that I wasn't aware of any actual issue, but just in thinking through the reality that we do have homes that have been sitting on the market for quite some time now that have nice pools. I would hate to have one of those next to me that started having a pool that was rented by the hour. And so just, and in the last time I remember the short-term rental or the 30-day rental requirement being addressed was in 2014. And I do recall that there was one member of P&Z and then also a council member at the time who wanted to have it revisited. And so there was a public hearing that this entire room was packed out during, and a lot of testimony against changing the 30 days to anything shorter than 30 days. And I recall a lot of testimony as well from neighbors who still live in Rollingwood who had short-term rentals happening by them, and kind of how it was impacting their quality of life living in Rollingwood. And so just in view of that, I thought it was worth kind of noting that I had seen that issue, and I really appreciate Councilmember Brown taking it up and looking at it more and continuing to put it on the agenda, because as long as it's going to P&Z, if there were other things going to P&Z, it's just an efficiency because of the cost to the city of holding public hearings and of P&Z looking at things to make sure it's looked at holistically. And I appreciate also, I hadn't thought about the commercial aspect of it. I was just thinking about like hot tubs by the hour in the city.
There's some nice looking ones here.
Yes.
Nice candles.
Yes. Yeah.
I now too am thinking about hot tubs by the hour. So, just gonna leave that one there for you.
This one's called the Urban Hot Spring.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Okay, council. I'm gently moving you toward a motion or not a motion or some sort of directive to us to bring something back to you. So you do have in your packet an ordinance that was drafted at your request last month. Happy to bring something back to you. Happy to put it on ice, whatever you would like. The floor is open for any motions or directive.
Maybe have planning and zoning take a look.
That's what I was
going
going to say. Mr. Mayor, I would move that the council request planning and zoning to take a look at the issue of whether to prohibit or address the short-term rental of residential amenities.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
You
can
have,
we,
I think
can we amend that just to say the rental of amenities and not the short-term rental of amenities?
Rental of amenities.
you have an amended motion regarding, you have that?
Rental
You got
of
that?
amenities.
The rental of amenities. You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Alec, you got the first one. Are you still seconding
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Okay, and you have a second by Mr. Robinson. Further discussion? Kevin, I'm sorry, I did it to you again. There is some discussion
No, I just forgot to lower my
an errant
hand.
hand raised. Okay, got it.
No, that was errant, yeah.
No problem. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Kevin, what you got?
I still think it's not a problem that we need to try to solve, but if we're sending it to them to ask them whether they think it's a problem to solve, then that's fine. I agree.
Gonna take that as a long yes.
I guess so. Thank you. Sorry.
Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. We have, moving off of agenda item number 16, moving on to agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action to adopt a schedule for public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council on changes to the commercial zoning code ordinances to implement the comprehensive plan. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item is brought for discussion purposes only to get feedback on what kind of process the council would like to undertake. We're getting to the point where we will have a draft ordinance that would implement zoning changes consistent with the comprehensive plan. This will have to go, these are zoning changes, that it will also have to go through P&Z. It's gonna be a lot of work. It's right now, the draft ordinance is 35 pages. just to, I think there's 20 or 21 recommendations from the comprehensive plan that would be covered by the draft. So I don't think there'll be very many surprises or a lot of controversy, but it will be a lot of, it's 35 pages of kind of the stuff we've been going through in the last 3 items, ordinance amendments. And so in thinking about it, I think we'll have that draft ready by the next council meeting, and you'll be able to see what kind of document it is and what kind of time it will take for review. I think there shouldn't be any surprises in it. These are all recommendations that have been voted on by planning and zoning previously and by the council previously in adopting the comprehensive plan. So policy-wise, I don't think there'll be any surprises. It's a lot of technical writing. And in thinking about it, my recommendation would be that we have a joint public hearing with planning and zoning, because we'll need Charlie and Bryce there. Bryce has done a lot of the drafting. Charlie will be our legal review, and we'll probably have, I'm thinking we would have representatives from the Comprehensive Plan Task Force to walk through the document or make presentations with respect to the document. And so I think we need about 60 days, don't we, out to get those, a joint public hearing on the schedule. And so, and then we also have, I think if it's possible to do the public hearing, then maybe ask planning and zoning to address their review of the actual ordinance language. I think we would want it done in two meetings. It's just a lot of material. But we can make that decision at the next council meeting. I just want to bring it up so that if you have any thoughts about how you'd like to see that done, we can talk about it and come up with a plan at the next council meeting, how we want to schedule those hearings and how much energy you'd want to undertake in tackling this project by meeting date. I think it'll probably, realistically, I think it will take 4 or 5 hours to go through the entire document as we've done with these issues tonight. And so if we want to break that up into 2 meetings, or if we want to have a special council meeting following planning and zoning, when we get planning and zoning's recommendation, do we want to have a special council meeting? Do we want to urge planning and zoning to do it within, have extra meetings probably during the summer to tackle their recommendation after we have a public meeting? That's the kind of thing I think we ought to give some time and attention to, and then make a decision next month. So that's why I wanted to bring this up.
And so that I understand, so you're thinking probably like a first pass and a joint hearing, and then like a P&Z first hearing and a P&Z second hearing, and then back to council for maybe a special meeting where we do all of it? So
As one special meeting, or perhaps 2. Probably by that time, we could probably do it in 1 meeting, because there would have been 3 hearings by that date.
Okay. Okay.
So
And when are we trying to finish it, land it?
I would have done it a year ago,
I know,
but it
but-
hadn't happened. Yes,
But
I
I'm
think
just saying,
realistic.
If we land it in the middle of the summer, do we want to do that, or we want to try and get it done before summer, or do we think August, or?
Well, if you don't do it in the summer, then you're doing it in the budget time. And so I think,
Hold on.
I think we want to ask planning and zoning and alert the community that this will be coming down through the summertime.
It shouldn't be horribly controversial
It shouldn't
at
be
this point
controversial.
because it's
Yes.
already gone through lots of discussion and hearings and.
Yes,
Let's hope.
yes.
Yeah, that seems fine with me. I mean, it's y'all's, it's your meetings to have, but something that looks like that would work from a posting administrative standpoint, so.
And that would give us time to get it done by the fall, before the end of the fiscal year.
And so, those two P and Z meetings, would those happen roughly when? So, is that happening summer?
Well, that's, I need input from Ashley on that. If we have, our March meeting, council meeting, we set a date for a joint public hearing with planning and zoning. How soon can that public hearing be held? I think we want that to be the starting point for public discussion.
So how about we do this? Why don't we go back to the drawing board and we'll do, you know how when our budget season starts, we have that little, we have
Calendar.
that calendar where we kind of lay
Mhm.
out. Why don't we do it it'll be a lot shorter than that, but why don't we do that in draft, not in final form, but in draft as our sort of suggestion, and then y'all can do with it and tweak it
I think that would be great,
at the next meeting.
yes.
Can we do that?
We can do that. Just a thought, if we're going to, so we do have to have one public hearing on, the specific things to make it happen. So there's a possibility that we could not necessarily follow, we could do above and beyond for the first public hearings and then, officially notice later once the actual, documents are prepared and we have ordinances ready to, go to their public hearing. So I'm saying we don't have to necessarily, we don't have to follow our exact public hearing notice on the very first one. If we think there's going to be a few more months of changes and, massaging it, we can have those public hearings once things are completed. So we could do we could postcard the city, we could do other kinds of notice for different public hearings, just so we aren't necessarily constrained by our code. I think our code notice is 20 days is the maximum that we have to do.
So what I would like to see on the calendar layout that we'll do, kind of like we do for budget, why don't you fill in the hard, like, you can have a suggested date, but fill in the hard dates of things that have to happen, and then give some suggestions, like if you want to say, do you want to do a postcard? You can kind of put those in, and then they can make decisions based on that.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
I would like what our legal counsel and the task force committee, the final draft of that ordinance to be the subject of the public hearing. I don't know that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
precluded from having amendments once you've had the public hearing. So I think we want to get it to the point where
Yes.
this is what the committee recommends,
Yes.
and,
Yeah, we want to have the hearings on the
okay.
work product.
I just
not on-
didn't, I wasn't sure from what Ashley was, I think we want the draft ordinance, at least is in the form as recommended by the task force.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to back up.
I don't wanna back up, no.
So,
No, yeah. I think that's where we wanna be to kick this off.
okay. We will prepare something for y'all to take a look at in terms of a calendar layout. Okay, anything else on this? My new system is
Me too.
okay, moving off of agenda item number 17, we will move on to agenda item number 18. Discussion and possible action to amend section 101-255 of the city's code of ordinances to clarify the appropriate placement of construction fences relative to the curb. This is Ms. Hudson's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Hudson.
So we added the requirement for residential installation of construction fences a while back out of safety concern. for, people exploring or going in, or, you know, swimming pools that weren't filled in and kids falling in or whatever, you know, all of the potential safety issues.
All of those, yeah.
I was very concerned at the time that we should have a distance back from the curb where the fences were installed, which we did not put in. And I think what we have in place is not enforceable, it's not being enforced, and it's too wishy-washy. And so builders are putting the fences in wherever they want and wherever it's convenient, and it is not safe. There is a lot of visibility obstruction because the fences are, in most cases, being put right up to the curb, even though we say as far away from all street curbs as practicable for the site. Well, you know, it's more convenient for them to put it at the curb, but that is not necessarily the safest location for it. It also says in a manner which allows for reasonable visibility around street corners and when exiting adjacent driveways. Our current ordinance does not allow a permanent fence to be, side permanent fence to be any closer than 15, well, any fence to be closer than 15 feet from the curb. And yet we are having these construction fences that are all the way up to the curb, and they're in place for years during the construction, and it's not safe. There's one on a new construction project over on Timberline that is all the way at the curb, and they put a little notch out for the fire hydrant, so the fire hydrant is not behind the fence, but the water meter's behind the fence. We don't have a carve out that the water meter has to be in front, so that kind of defeats the purpose of having, you know, our water meters move to the front if they're towards the front of the property, but then they're behind the construction fence. That same fence right now, when you're driving towards Mopac on Timberline, you can't even tell that there is a cul-de-sac, an intersection coming up, because you can't see, you know, the roads curve. And you can't even see that there's an intersection coming up. The house is right on the corner, or the property's right on the corner. You can't even see that there's an intersection coming up until you're almost right there on top of it. So I think we need to change, and this is also related in some regards to the next agenda item, that we need to change this so that the construction fence has to be put no closer than, it shouldn't be in the right-of-way either, right? So it should be 10 feet from the property line at a minimum, so that we have adequate visibility, we have, the water meters are not being obstructed, so that, you know, when you're walking and there's cars parked all over the place, and you need to get out of the street because you can't get out of the street when the fence is all the way there. You can't even step up above the curve to get out of the way. I mean, it's just a safety issue all the way around, I think. And so I think we should revise this to say that you have to put the construction fence no closer than 10 feet from the curb. Because that gives Nikki or the code enforcement officer or whoever it is, it's like, you know, you go out there and you measure, and it's not a, well, I think this is not causing a visibility instruction. Well, I think it is. You know, it's like, if it's at 10 feet, no, move it back. It just makes it a lot easier to enforce, I think, as well.
Mr.
So
Robinson?
a couple comments. I can see, like, maybe on the corners and edges, doing something so we have visibility. The only, and also, like, if we have meters, fire hydrants, that kind of thing, making sure that those aren't behind the fence, that makes sense to me. The only thing that, like, I just don't know, haven't ever built a house. But I imagine that you need place to stage all the materials. And so I gather they put it all the way where they do, so they have room to put all the stuff. If we cut it, I'm worried, I'm just questioning, actually, I don't know. I'm thinking that if we say, hey, 10 feet, that 10 feet is no longer usable for any staging or anything, because we're not going to allow them to, like, stage stuff outside the fence, so they lose some space, and I just don't know what the impact of that is actually on the.
Construction has got to be 40 feet from the curb, right? 10-foot right-of-way, 30-foot setback, so they've got 40 feet. And you shouldn't really be staging stuff in the right-of-way because the right-of-way is supposed to be accessible in case utility people have to come in and
But this
do
is-
some work in the right-of-way.
I know, but that's also temporary stuff that can be moved easily. If, like need to get in and repair a gas line or something like that, we can move it. It's not like a permanent structure on.
If there's
on
a
the right
gas
of way.
leak, you don't want to have
Okay.
somebody have to come in
Okay,
there and
bad
move
example,
the
bad
equipment
example,
before
bad
you can
example,
fix
wa-
the gas leak.
A water line or whatever, like I get it. Okay, but that's Anyway.
But to your point, that is why we did that language, is to try to give some flexibility. Because if you've got a big lot, you can put it easily 10 feet back and it's fine. If you've got a small lot, then yeah, you probably do need as much space as you possibly can.
I have a
to
question.
stage your materials. Yes, sir.
If I can jump in.
Jump in.
Ms. Hudson, you talked about the right of way, and I'm not sure what you mean by the term right of way, because my understanding is that the road is the right of way and that the curb is the property line. You might be referring to maybe there's a utility easement across the front of all the lots. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
No, the curb is not the property line. There's a right-of-way, which is 10 feet from the curb, I think, in all places, most places. That is not technically your property, and it's available for use.
Is it 10 or 5?
It's 10,
It's 10.
pretty sure it's 10.
And I'm not sure that that's right. I think it is your property. There may be an easement through there, and you're calling it a right of way. A right of way is a roadway, but I think you're referring to maybe a blanket easement for utilities.
No.
Okay, well, maybe we can, or maybe I can pull up my survey from my lot
It's a right-of-way,
and look at it.
yes.
Could you turn on your mic? I'm sorry, I didn't hear whoever spoke.
That was Dave Ben, she doesn't have a mic.
Oh,
But he can use mine.
Well, they just went up there.
Yeah, in our code, for the most part, it's known as right of way. In fact, I think it's in the definition.
so we don't own 10 feet from the curb, or the first 10 feet of our lots from the curb?
Nikki's coming to speak on this.
Come on up, Nikki.
Nikki Stotzenberger, Development Services Manager. So it really depends on your plat and your survey. Some properties, property line does go to the curb, and then from the curb back is a right of way, which just means in a world of understanding an easement, but it's called a right of way, which at that point, that's where utilities can go. We have access to it. It's a buffer, those kinds of things. But in some other plats, the property line and the survey, which dictates that, sometimes you have, from the curb line, your property line actually could be back 10 feet, 15 feet. And then from there, from that property line, that's when you have your 30-foot building setback line. So, some people look like they have this huge front yard, but technically their plat survey may be what's dictating how that is. So, yes, ma'am.
And it could also be where sidewalks would be placed.
Correct.
So that's why
Correct.
it could be called a right of way.
And if we were to come in and incorporate all that, that's where those would go, and everybody would have that.
Okay, so we do have the right to put sidewalks along all our streets if we wanted to. Mostly. We'd have to check each
can't
lot.
defer.
but-
Yeah, you would have to check all the plats. You would have to check all that. But again, for understanding and trying to put it into a visualization, yes, that
Sure.
right of way is
Okay.
that area that we have access to.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful, and I learned something new tonight, so that's great.
Yes, sir.
Come on up.
Dave Bench, 1 Randolph. When we built our house back in the Mike Alexander days, and we went to apply for a building permit, we were told where to put our silt fence and our construction fence. That was, I think, after the ordinance had already passed, that you had to have the construction fence, but we were told where to put it. It was, Mike had put, along with the building permit, there were a number of marked documents, and they said, well, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. Now, I don't know if that's the way it is today, but it was that way back in, 2019 or so.
Okay.
Just a little tidbit.
Thank you, Dave.
I don't think it's either not being marked or it's not being enforced because they are being put all over the place.
Yeah.
So a sedimentation and erosion control plan is a part of your site plan and zoning or drainage plan. So that is something your civil engineer will come up with. Typically, that is
For the silt fences.
for the silt fencing.
He
Yes.
was also talking about the construction fence.
A construction fence. We don't have anything in the code to go by of where we should be placing it.
What happened is the construction, when the silt fence goes in, when the silt fence goes in, the construction fence is often part of the same set of posts. They'll run the silt fence along the construction fence, so it's just easier for the construction people to do the whole thing at the same time. The same people who put the silt fence in are the people who put a construction fence in. That's who does it.
Yeah, that's not typical. It may have been in your case, but yeah.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the council. Y'all can visit later.
In other words, but yes, a erosion control plan is a part of your plan, which the engineer will determine where the slopes are and how best to accommodate that.
Okay.
It's the silt fence,
Yes, ma'am.
which is not what we were addressing here.
Right.
so.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to just say that I support your proposal, Council Member Hudson, to define a setback for the construction fence. I think 5 feet is probably better than 10 to Mr. Robinson's point about how they need as much practical area as possible for staging. And I also like your idea of not being closer than 15 feet to a corner and excluding the gas meter and such. So I think that's helpful.
Okay. Council, any other questions for Ms. Hudson? So you have in your packet the existing ordinance. We don't have anything else for your consideration. We're happy to take direction from you. Happy to take direction from you, happy to take a motion, happy to not take a motion, whatever you want to do. Just let us know how you want to proceed. If you choose to make the change tonight, you could do that as a motion. If you choose to give us direction on what to bring back to you, we can do that as well.
I mean, I could go with 5 feet. I like that. But it's up to you. I'll
Okay,
let you
well,
take a motion.
I move that we amend section 101-255 temporary construction fences, item 4, to say no closer than 10 feet from all street curbs.
Okay, you have that motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, not hearing a second on that one. You want to try again?
I don't know what anybody's objecting to, so I don't know what
Okay.
to change.
Well,
I think they were waiting on 5, but Ms. Brown?
my concern would be, we would have to get a little more complicated than 5 feet if we want to have corners and cul-de-sacs and visibility addressed. And so,
And water meters and
water meters
right-of-way
and
access
hydrants
and,
we've got, in 5, we've got fire hydrants and wastewater lift stations. So I don't know whether we need to bring this back with some thought or try to work it out tonight? It sounds like, do you think 10 feet would take care of all those issues?
I think 10 feet addresses the right-of-way. It should address the water meters. It improves the visibility. You know, if you're backing your car out of your driveway and there's a fence that goes all the way to the property line, you can't see if somebody's coming until you're already, 6 feet out into the street. So you have to have enough sight distance to be able to get your driver's window beyond the fence so you can see if anybody's coming.
Same thing with trucks leaving the site.
So
Is your
I think
microphone on?
5 feet is not far enough for that. So that, like I said, our permanent fence ordinance is 15 feet. And so 10 feet is already less than that.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
I would like to, I think the point of saying they should be no closer than 15 feet to a corner is also a good addition to it. If you can offer that as a friendly amendment.
He's asking you if you want to amend it. Are you good with how it is?
I'm fine with adding that.
She says she's fine with adding it.
Okay. I'm
So
gonna,
she's
I thought she was saying it's fine as with it how it is.
okay, so that I don't get chastised by Desiree and Ashley. If you'll restate, I'm gonna let you withdraw the motion, restate the motion however you want it with the new language, and then I'll re-seek a second.
Okay. I move amendment of section 101-255, temporary construction fences, item 4, to state no closer than 10 feet from all street curbs and no closer than 15 feet to an intersection.
Okay, you have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Hudson and a second by Ms. Brown. Is there further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that it's section A4 that she's referring to? I just want that clarified.
You're right, yes.
Okay.
To clarify, this amendment is in section 101-255A4, correct?
Yes.
You agree? All right.
Thank you.
That is correct. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Opposed say no.
No.
There being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number, to be clear, we will bring this back in an actual ordinance for you. You'll see it in the consent agenda next month. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 19, discussion and possible action to clarify the limitations on residential construction within the right-of-way, including possible amendments to section 28-20 of the city's code of ordinances. This is Ms. Hudson's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Hudson.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else reads the little flyers that Texas Gas Service puts in your gas bill, but,
I don't get a gas bill.
okay.
I'm
for-
paperless.
For anybody that has gas service, that still gets their bills mailed to them, there was a flyer in the last bill. I mean, there's a flyer in every bill, but in the last bill, which is in the packet, it's reproduced here in the packet. Their first little article on the flyer last month was, "What do you know about right-of-way?" And part of the discussion there says right-of-ways should be kept clear of obstructions to enable Texas Gas Service employees and its contractors to safely operate, patrol, inspect, maintain, and repair the pipelines and equipment as needed. To help maintain safety, it is important that you do not build or install any structures, plant trees or shrubs, or store anything that could be an obstruction within the right-of-way area. This is one of those things that's logical, but most people don't pay attention to it, and we have not been enforcing this from a construction standpoint. There are a number of front yard drainage structures that have been put in place around the city that are closer to the street than 10 feet. There's also a photograph that was added today, and I apologize for that, but I didn't see it till today, over on Hubbard Circle in Pickwick, where they're doing some work on the water lines over there, where newly installed landscaping at a residence is now dug up. There's a big excavation there where I think they were accessing water line, and there's a huge pile of dirt in the right of way because they were doing the construction. And they don't knock on your door and ask you to move stuff or tell you they're coming, whatever. When they come in to do the work, they just go. And so it is, I think we need to make sure that as a city, we are not authorizing people to construct, especially drainage structures in the right of way, because those are required to mitigate runoff, to meet state law regarding drainage. And if it is in the right of way and they come in and, utility companies comes in and has a project and they need access and they can just knock the wall down, then you have no drainage structure anymore. And that is not appropriate for us to authorize people to build something in the right of way. It's also not, not safe. Like I said, if there's a gas leak, they need to be able to get in there and access it right away. Even a water leak, they need to be able to get in there and access it right away. And we should not be allowing retaining walls or drainage structures or any of those things to be built in the right of way. And I think we need to make sure that our city engineers or anybody that's reviewing building plans for code purposes, code compliance or drainage, is not allowing construction in the right of way. Right now, we have an ordinance that addresses construction in the right of way, but it is addressing it more from the standpoint of the utility company, and it doesn't really address residential construction in the right of way. So I don't know if we need to amend our ordinance to specifically say that you cannot construct, concrete flower beds or anything in the right of way, or if we just need to make sure that we are not authorizing that in our building permits.
And I mean, I think we should probably have, if you want us to, we could probably have council look at it. I mean, I don't think you could say nothing in the right of way. I mean, mailboxes and, you have.
Sidewalk, driveway, mailbox, those are.
Right.
Those are small, and in most cases you can work around, or if you tear up the driveway, it's not gonna cause somebody's house to flood.
Right.
But.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you.
Right.
We probably need to look into it and see how we define things and.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the drainage structures that are going in the right of way, because those can just be knocked down without any warning.
So when you're saying drainage structures, are those parallel to the street or what?
Well, the one right across the street is parallel to the street.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, and obviously if there's lines, utility lines, like kind of covering that stuff up is probably not a great idea. But if the homeowner puts something on there, they just got to know that it gets torn up. It's on them to they're gonna have to be, especially like beds and things like that. That doesn't really bother me so much. Someone puts some dirt down and a couple plants in the right of way.
It doesn't. It's construction. It's not talking about putting in a lantana bush.
But you had mentioned that flyer you mentioned, talked about. You just read it, and it said trees and things like that in it.
Well, it said trees, but it didn't say,
Okay.
pansies. It said,
Okay.
something that would be in the way of preventing access if there's an emergency that needs to be addressed.
The other thing is like, what if there is, I mean, that we have an easement, like there's this right of way, the easement, but there's nothing underneath it. You're not, city's not using it, no utilities are using it. What's the harm in that case? Of having, like you said, the drainage thing? Cause there's nothing, there's not a gas line possibly that they need to be accessed quickly. I mean, in those cases, is it really that big of a deal to have like the homeowner put something in there?
Well, are we
Question.
gonna go on a property by property basis and say, you can put it in, but you can't, and this, you know, and
Yeah.
Google Fiber's gonna come in and put something in there. If we're doing street construction, we may need to access it. I mean, that's a lot of,
I mean, part of the difficulty is, though, I think it's been I mean, you can look at a number of the houses. There has been no enforcement on it for so long that you would be basically doing what you just described. Of you're basically telling everyone that's been here before, yeah, your grandfather, that's fine, but everybody going. And I'm not saying you wouldn't want to do that, but
we shouldn't be issuing building permits that allow people to build in the right of way.
I
Oh,
understand.
can I weigh in on this?
Yes, sir.
So right now, our code prohibits, getting a building permit, I think, to build any structures that are in that right of way, because it is would be a violation of the setback rules. And even the fence setbacks, even for partial fences, are further back than that. I recall, because I built one when I built my house. But again, this looks like another solution in search of a problem to me. Until it's a problem, I just don't think we need to start prohibiting things.
So again, define when it's a problem.
Well, you've given hypothetical potential problems that, for example, somebody builds a drainage structure and then a utility company comes in and destroys it during an emergency, causing the house to flood. Well, that hadn't happened. So when that happens, I'll support discussion about it.
So I don't know. I always thought that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Well, but overregulation and solving problems that don't exist just irritates homeowners and residents. And, I just don't want to be in a government regulatory environment where we're, passing rules to prohibit, to solve problems that don't exist yet. So, I totally understand the problem that you laid out with the construction fencing. It makes perfect sense to me, with sight distances on corners and setbacks, to keep people a little safety room from the street and such as that. And that, I can see that's a problem, but I just don't see that this has been a problem. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Any other questions for Ms. Hudson? Comments, thoughts? Ms. Brown?
I would like to get a report from staff on what is allowed under our current code in the right of way, and what the recommendation would be with respect to physical drainage structures. I'm not meaning permanent, non-movable drainage structures that are in the right of way. What we're allowing, I want to get the problem, I want to get the issue defined. What we do allow in the right of way today, if anything, of a permanent nature.
I can take pictures.
I know, I've seen them, but let's see, but I don't know what the code says, and I don't know whether they're permitted.
It doesn't address it.
I don't, so let's get the problem defined a little better, and then come back next month.
Okay.
Or come back next month with a report from staff on what the code, says about permanent structure, any kind of permanent structure, particularly drainage structures in the right of way. And if we have, if we're having problems in enforcing what our code allows currently. and then we put it all together.
I think part of the problem is that our code doesn't address it right now.
Well, if that's the case, then we need to address it, but we're supposing, I'd like to see the language and what's actually being done.
Okay.
And was anything done on this? I mean, is that kosher?
That's allowable.
That's allowed. Okay.
That's the point.
Okay.
That is my point, is that they can come in and do that.
The picture, are you talking
Right.
about the picture?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That is how they are using the right of way when they are working on a water line.
And is
That's
this,
the one, I can't see the picture. Can staff share the picture for the Zoom
The
audience?
picture is in the
Or-
package.
it's in the
It's in the
packet.
packet.
Okay, I can look in the packet
Right
then.
away.
Is this landscaping dirt, or what is this?
That's what it looks like.
That's the dirt that they dug out, the excavation, when they were digging up I believe it's a water line.
Where were they supposed to put the dirt in that case? Like, who
That's
said-
where they're supposed to put it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That is the utility company using the right of way.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry, I was
Ah,
meant.
okay.
I
I
was.
thought this was the problem with this.
No, that's not,
like, I was like, I don't-
that's not the problem.
Okay.
That is what they can do when they have to access the right of
utility
way.
company,
Right.
not the
Yes.
homeowners.
Got it.
The amount of dirt that would be created if they're doing, okay.
Right.
Glad we clarified that.
So
'Cause
if
I
there's
too
a, if
was
there's
like you,
a,
this
ret-
is the problem.
if
This
there's
is
a
the problem.
retaining wall there or a drainage structure or something else
Got it.
that's in the way,
Right. Understood.
it gets wiped out when they're trying to access what they have to get to make their repairs.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have our to-do, unless there's a motion to be made. We'll bring back some information on this for next council meeting.
That's fine.
Okay. And with that, we'll move off of agenda item number 19. Move on to agenda item number 20. Update from the mayor on the Edge Grove beautification project. This is Mr. Glasheen's item, but asking me, so I'll recognize Mr. Glasheen first, and then I'll opine.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you, Mayor Massengill, and the city staff for taking the initiative on this project and just doing it and getting it done. And I thought you might want the opportunity to just kind of update us on it, on the project. So,
Well, that's
we in the public will know.
very
what's been done.
magnanimous of you. Thank you. Yeah, happy to do that. It's a short update. It is more beautiful than it was. It is not as beautiful as it will be. Obviously, we worked with a local neighbor actually that had some of those nice holly trees that he had ordered too many of for a project he was doing. So we were able to get those at a great price. Anyway, so those are kind of the backdrop, and then we've got some nice crepe myrtles that we worked with a local nursery to put in. We're expecting those to bloom in the spring and look really nice. And then we did some nice Texas sage, native Texas sage there kind of in the front, and then obviously mulched all of that. So the plan is to let those hollies fully grow in. They'll kind of grow into one another over time, and then we'll keep those. The Izzy's crew will keep those trimmed. We're still watering them right now, and we'll keep doing that through the spring and summer. But all of those plants should take root and be able to be pretty sturdy and withstand the heat and the extreme winter temperatures as well. Obviously, we're using kind of behind it right now to help stage some of our water. For some of our water infrastructure projects. We'll do that for the foreseeable future because that's kind of the only space other than down at Delana. And after we talked to the contractor, it was going to be much more difficult to stage down at Delana. So anyway, we'll be using it like that for a while. It will slowly grow in, and hopefully by the time that water project's over, you won't be able to see even as much. When the AO Services is done with it, they'll clean it up and
and have agreed to kind of put it back in a state that it was prior, or probably even better. So that's kind of the future outlook for it. And thank you all for budgeting and giving us. Oh, actually, I guess we should tell. Is now a good time to? It's close enough to final, so tell them how they budgeted for it, but then we did some awesome things, or Ashley did some awesome things.
Staff did. So during Winter Storm Mara, we all of the debris haul off and everything that we had to do, we were able to submit to FEMA for a grant to basically cover all of the work we did at that time. It's been awarded. We're still working through all of the final, paperwork and everything, so it's not in our pockets yet, but it's looking like we're going to get about $50,000 for all of that. The work we did at that time, basically compensation. A lot of that was staff time that was just their weekends and stuff going back and forth hauling, and so that money can be used in that area, which is where we had claimed most of the damage had occurred, because that's where we stored all the tree limbs. We had damaged trees, we had dead trees back there that we were able to get reimbursement for. So hopefully by next month we have a official update that we have received that grant. But Izzy and his team helped a lot putting that together, getting us all the information, and we feel prepared now for the next time something like that happens, that our documentation and everything will be in line, where it won't take us hopefully a year to get that all together, but it was kind of a learning process. So.
We approached it as a learning process to try to get the grant dollars from FEMA, not knowing if we would be successful, but trying to use it as a learning opportunity of like, okay, what do we need to be keeping up with if we try to do this in the future? So we learned a lot from that process, and then we learned so much, and they did such a great job that we actually were successful. It looks like we'll be successful in the grant award. So, you budgeted the dollars to do that project, but now we'll be able to backfill that budget with even more than what you budgeted originally. So, yeah.
Good
job. They were not. I'm not sure it was. They had quite the enthusiasm for the learning opportunity when I suggested it, but it all worked out. So, and we now know what FEMA looks for, so that's helpful. Yes. That's your update. And we look forward to maybe doing some more things like that in the future. We even made a beautification project sign that we kept, and so look around for a future beautification project near you.
Well, thank y'all and congratulations.
Yes, thank you, sir. Moving off of agenda item number 20 on to 21, discussion and possible action regarding Western Hills curbside path and shrubbery. This is Mr. Glasheen's item. Recognize Mr. Glasheen.
I just have a question about it, because the park commission is considering improvements in the park, and one of the things they're discussing is improving the walking path. That path does go all the way around Western Hills. If this right-of-way information applies to their lot, then that belongs not to Western Hills but to the city. And I'm not clear who it belongs to. I'd sure like to see the plat. I should have requested it from staff earlier, or come in and looked it up. But I'd like to know who owns that property where the trail is around Western Hills adjacent to the curb, to see whether or not we need to get them to fix that trail, or whether it needs to be part of our parks project.
Okay, we can look into that. I'll have Nikki and Ashley provide you some information that might be helpful to know a little bit better where our right-of-way starts and their property starts.
So we just need the plat of that lot. Should show us.
Okay. We will.
And then they have a bunch of dead bushes outside their fence as well, which are a combination of Fatinia and cherry laurel. And I'm not sure, who talks to Western Hills. I mean, I'm a member over there, but we rarely go, and I don't ever talk to anybody over there. But do we have any kind of a relationship with anybody at the city or on council with the folks that manage Western Hills?
Yeah, I think we have a few different relationships. We'll circle. We'll find out the information on the lot for you. That's easy, and then we'll try to reach out. And for all I know, they may be planning something in that regard.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if they are planning something, and if it's in the right of way, if it belongs to them or doesn't belong to them. It's a curious matter.
Okay.
So,
Happy to look into that. Will you make note? Okay, we've got it.
Thank you.
With that, moving off of agenda item number 21 on to 22, review, discussion, and possible action on revisions to the penalties and enforcement provisions in the city's code of ordinances. I will turn it over to Ms. Wayman to open this one up, and then I think she has Charlie to help you through some of his research and suggestion.
The idea for this item came up during the commercial code review process that we have been working on. Throughout, as we were working on different sections, it was brought up that some sections have their own enforcement section, others don't have that, listed directly after a specific section about a certain regulation. And so we had the thought, we want to make sure that everything in our code is fully enforceable, obviously, and to make sure that we had the appropriate provisions, and that we also weren't adding any unnecessary provisions in certain sections if it was already covered. And so we asked Mr. Zeck to take a look at all of our enforcement sections in our code as a whole and make any recommendations about duplicates, things that weren't covered correctly, things that maybe didn't match state law. And so he has brought it's not a whole lot of amendments, actually. It wasn't as there wasn't a lot, so it wasn't terrible, but he's brought some proposed ordinance changes here before us today, and so we do have those in the packet. They are the second attachment, and I believe Mr. Zeck can answer any questions about why specific sections are included or not included.
And I would just add that with one exception, and I'll point that exception out, I consider this to be a non-substantive change to our code. It's just eliminating repetitive provisions that are covered by our general penalty clause. There's a couple things that were eliminated simply because there was one, at least, that was inconsistent with state law. But the one that I consider a substantive change is actually the very first one in Exhibit A, Chapter 8, beginning, it's on the changes on line 78 of page 3. And it changes the fine from a fine not to exceed 500 to a fine not to exceed 2,000. And that's because 2,000 is the maximum fine authorized by law for violation of these types of provisions. And we can keep it 500 if you want, but I made an assumption that we would prefer to at least give the court the flexibility to impose a fine at the maximum amount allowed by law if necessary. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question on that point.
Yes, ma'am.
What's attached to the ordinance are provisions that are being repealed.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, so section 1-14 would remain in effect, and there's no change in it.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And so sometimes there's $500 penalties, and sometimes there's $2,000 penalties, and sometimes $4,000 penalties. Don't we want all of those to be the maximum in order to allow the city the opportunity, if there's some egregious case, to, are any of the penalties in 1-14 lower than the maximum allowed by law?
No, ma'am, they are not. They are consistent with the
They're
maximum amounts
consistent.
authorized
Okay.
by law.
All right. Then I have one other question,
Yes, ma'am.
unless there was more you had to explain.
No, ma'am.
On page 4, lines 108 to 1112, that language isn't really a fine or penalty. It's an ability to remove a sign that would be required to be removed. Is that something we need to retain?
No, ma'am. This is one of those that is inconsistent with state law. Under state statute, there are very specific provisions that we're required to comply with when taking down signs.
Okay.
And this is inconsistent with that state law.
All right, and then one more question. On page 7, in 103-122, this would retain the language that nothing in this article is a waiver of a city's right to bring a civil action or obtain other relief that's allowed by law.
No, ma'am, it would not. The state statute gives us that authority regardless of whether or not it's in our ordinance.
All right, and so do we need this do we need this same language for any other type of violation? This is just in section 103. Do we need to add this kind of language so that it's clear we're not waiving any right that would be authorized by law for any other type of violation?
Trying to look at 103. Oh, okay. Now I'm
It's
sorry.
lines-
I apologize. I was looking at a different section.
Line 214 to 223.
Yes, ma'am. I actually left that. We could actually delete this. I actually left it because I thought, well, in this particular section, it might be nice for this specific, because what we're talking about are the environmental protection controls. I
Right.
just thought it'd be nice to reinforce that in this section. That's the only reason why I left it. And it could be deleted. We have authority under chapter 54. I
I'm
believe.
suggesting we need to make it broader and apply it
Oh.
generically and not just limit it to 103.
I see what you're saying. So the reason I left, state statute does give us that authority to go to go to court to enforce. It gives us the authority to do that. I could have deleted this because it is in state law. I left it, and maybe I shouldn't have, but I left it because I just thought, well, this might be something that the council wants to make sure is reinforced in this section because it's specifically there. It doesn't need to be there in order for us to do that. We have that authority to do that in I think it's chapter 54 of the local government code. Yeah, chapter 54 of the local government code is enforcement of municipal ordinances, and it is that state statute that gives us specific authority where we can go in and civilly enforce all of not all of them, the ones that are listed within the statute.
All right.
And this, the section you referenced is inclusive of that statutory authority. I just thought y'all might like to leave it in that particular section. I
Okay.
made a judgment call, I guess is what I'm saying. Right, yes, exactly. Well, not necessarily belt and suspenders, but yes. I oftentimes go through these reviews and the council will say, well, shouldn't we have this in here so that the public knows that we can do these things? And this is one of the times I thought, well, maybe you would like to keep it in there, so I just made that judgment call.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
In section 1-14, item Romanet I, or little I, this says that any person who's convicted in a municipal court or is in default of payment of a fine or costs can work it off through community service. Do we want to allow that for all violations?
So the court is gonna have discretion, with respect to how the court is gonna have some discretion there regardless of what our ordinance says with respect to alternative enforcement mechanisms. And the court has that discretion regardless of whether or not it's in here.
So any fine or penalty can be the court has discretion to,
Certainly if they don't have a way to pay, I mean, there are alternative ways for the court to get compliance, yes, ma'am.
well, what this says is that any person that's has been fined,
And I'm sorry, you gave me a section number, but could you give me a page and line number so that I can
It's on the
follow?
on this section, little I.
I'm sorry, I can't read that.
1-14
It's
is not
the
in your
section
ordinance.
Oh, it's not in my
1-14.
ordinance.
The big
Oh,
section.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Section 1-14, paragraph I. A person who may be convicted in municipal court may be ordered to community service and shall be allowed credit against the fine and the cost adjudged in the amount So it sounds like any time a person is assessed a fine, that person has a right, not just the opportunity, or not just the court allowing it, but that person has a right to work it off through community service. And I'm not sure that, do we really want it to be that broad? Don't we want to have the stiffness of an actual monetary penalty in some cases?
I didn't look at this particular section. This may be a requirement of state law that's just been put into our code. And so I would like to verify that
Okay.
before we eliminate it.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to ask if we could have that brought back
Yes, ma'am.
next month.
Yeah. But yeah, just to your point, my personal feeling is like, yeah, the community service, I would probably be okay with that. I mean, I don't know, we're not gonna be making money. I mean, this is gonna be a revenue generating thing for us, but that's.
Well, if we have someone who's a flagrant abuser of our code provisions, or
Clean up the park, fix the park. Fix the park. I don't know.
and making money off of it, I think we want to be able to assess a fine.
Okay, making money, yeah.
You're all about the money now.
Well, yeah, well, no, I mean, like, well, maybe I didn't understand. But generally, I think giving someone the right to be able to pay by doing community service work doesn't bother me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I like the option, I just don't want it mandatory, something a person can avoid a fine
Yeah.
by mowing the.
She doesn't want them to have discretion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the choice.
Ought to be the court's discretion, not the defendant's.
I see the
That's
counselor
my difference.
making him.
Anyway.
Yes,
if we
ma'am,
could-
I will,
if we
I will
could
look
get
at
a
that issue
report.
and bring it back.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a note here to do that. We've got a note there to do that. So that will come back. Any other questions for Charlie?
Cookies for the staff.
Okay. With that, happy to entertain a motion on 22.
Move approval.
Have a motion to move approval of ordinance number 2024-02-21-22. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no.
No, just because I didn't quite follow everything and I'm not really interested in voting for increasing the penalty.
No problem. You got 4 ayes and 1 no. Motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 23. Discussion and possible action regarding appointments to fill a vacancy on the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown. You do have all of the necessary information, I think, in your packets. Recognize Ms. Brown, and then happy to have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see, we have a number of people that have, we have a good candidate opportunity for planning and zoning. I have reviewed all of the applications and talked with a number of the candidates and have talked with our chair of planning and zoning and would like to nominate Jerry Fleming for the vacancy on planning and zoning. Jerry is a consulting civil engineer, now retired, more than 40 years of service, has done extensive work with regard to building codes and compliance. I think he fills a gap that we have, not a gap, but adds a level of expertise to planning and zoning from the field of civil engineering that we don't have on that committee currently. And most importantly, I think he's got enough experience with codes and permitting process that he can step right into what's going to be a lot of work at planning and zoning on review of the commercial credit code, commercial
That
those
one.
were long days
That one.
ago. The commercial zoning code and the work of the CRCRC. And so my recommendation would be to appoint Jerry Fleming. I move to appoint Jerry Fleming to the vacancy on planning and zoning.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Is there further discussion?
I mean, I've never met Jerry. I'm sure he's great. There's a couple other people that I like on the list too that I'd like to see on here, but
Yeah, I do too, but
Tough
we
call.
may have more openings come up. I mean, it's nice to have a deep bench,
yeah.
you know. So to speak. Yeah, so to speak.
And I was really
Pun intended.
more motivated by Jerry's particular background and expertise than any
Okay.
other issue.
All right. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
opposed say no.
Um,
Being 5 ayes, no.
I'm abstaining because I just don't know.
There being 4 ayes, 1 abstention, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 24, report from staff on the status of legal action to trademark the Rollingwood logos. Where are we in line?
Last month we were 45 ahead of us. This month the answer I got was it has moved up a couple spots and that we are trying to get more attorneys hired to help.
I started to say,
Oh,
at some
good.
point they've got to tell you something.
Yes, and that they hope we'll have better news soon. That's what they said. So.
Yeah.
Move adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays. You are adjourned. Thank you, council.